The restaurant was buzzing with life. Soft jazz music played in the background, mixing with the chatter of patrons, the clinking of glasses, and the sizzle of food in the kitchen. It was the kind of place people went to celebrate milestones, birthdays, anniversaries, promotions. A sophisticated ambience where every detail was perfect, or at least, it seemed that way. Maya Johnson wiped the sweat from her brow as she deftly maneuvered through the crowded dining room. It had been another hectic lunch rush, but she was used to it. She'd been working at this upscale restaurant in downtown Los Angeles for over 4 years now. She knew every table, every customer, every pattern. She was good at her job. More than good, actually. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? But something felt different today. As Maya approached table 12 with a tray of drinks, her heart skipped a beat. Greg Thompson, the restaurant manager, was standing in the middle of the dining room, his face scrunched up in a way that made her stomach tighten. Greg had always been a bit of a hard ass, but today there was something in his expression, something colder, more calculating. He was glaring right at her. Maya took a deep breath and set the drinks down on the table, forcing a smile. But the tension in the air wasn't lost on her. Greg's eyes followed her as she turned to walk away. She had hoped it was just her nerves, but deep down, she knew something was wrong. Johnson. Greg's voice cut through the noise of the restaurant like a sharp blade. Maya froze. Her name sounded foreign coming from his mouth. The customers at table 12 glanced between the two of them, clearly curious. Yes, Greg? Maya's voice was steady, but her pulse quickened. Come here, he snapped, motioning toward the back of the restaurant. Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. This was not how she expected her shift to go. She walked toward him slowly, trying to read the situation, but his eyes were unreadable. Close the door, he ordered once she reached him, and she did, the faint click of the door echoing in the quiet space. You're late again, he began, voice low and tight with frustration. And that table, 12, you took forever with their drinks. They were clearly pissed. You think I don't notice? You think this job is just about carrying plates? Maya's chest tightened. She had been working tirelessly lately, picking up shifts, covering for her sick coworkers, doing everything she could to keep things running smoothly. Greg, I've been doing my best, she started, but he cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. Best isn't good enough, Maya. You've been slipping up for the last few weeks. It's getting embarrassing. Maya's face flushed. She had been nothing but committed to this job. Her mind raced. What was he talking about? Everything was fine, wasn't it? Are you really going to stand here and lecture me about mistakes that don't even matter? Maya shot back, her voice trembling with a mix of frustration and disbelief. Greg's face twisted into something far colder, his eyes narrowing. You don't get to speak to me like that, Maya. I'm your boss. And if you can't keep it together, then maybe it's time for you to go. Maya's mouth went dry. She blinked, trying to process what he was saying. What do you mean, go? She asked, a mixture of confusion and anger in her voice. Greg crossed his arms, his jaw tight. I mean, leave. I don't need to explain myself to you. You've been slacking off, and I can't afford to keep someone like you on the team. I'm done. For a moment, Maya couldn't breathe. The words stung. Her pulse throbbed in her ears. This was the last thing she expected. This was her livelihood, her future. She had worked so hard to get here, and now, she was being told to leave. Without reason, without warning. Tears pricked at the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had to stay composed, even though she felt like her world was crumbling around her. As she turned to leave the kitchen, she noticed the buzz of the restaurant hadn't stopped. The tension was palpable, customers watching the scene unfold from their tables, whispers already spreading through the room. But it wasn't just the guests who were paying attention. A tall figure in a black leather jacket had stepped into the restaurant, causing a brief pause in the activity. He seemed to stand out in the sea of well-dressed patrons, exuding an aura of confidence that commanded attention. Maya didn't know who it was at first, but there was something about him that seemed oddly familiar. Then, her heart nearly stopped. Elon Musk, the entrepreneur, the billionaire, the mind behind Tesla and SpaceX. He was standing right there, in the middle of the restaurant, watching the exchange between her and Greg. Greg, still furious, didn't notice Elon's presence. But Maya did. She stood frozen in place, a mix of shock and disbelief on her face. Elon Musk. In this restaurant. Right now. Is there a problem here? Elon's calm voice broke through the tension like a cool breeze on a hot day. Everyone in the restaurant turned toward him. The room fell silent. Greg glanced over, clearly thrown off guard by the unexpected appearance of one of the most famous men in the world. No problem at all, he stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. Just a little misunderstanding with one of the staff. Elon took a step forward, his gaze shifting to Maya. I don't think it's a misunderstanding, he said slowly. It seems to me that you're firing someone who's been working hard for you. Am I wrong? Maya's heart raced as Elon's words hung in the air. She could hardly believe it. Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized space travel, the man who had changed the world. And now, he was standing up for her. Greg, still flustered, tried to mask his unease. I'm the manager here, and I make the decisions. It's not your concern. Elon's eyes narrowed. Actually, it is. I'm not going to let this stand. Maya, you're not leaving. In fact, I'm offering you something far better than this place. The words hung in the air, each one settling like a weight in Maya's chest. She could barely process what was happening. Her mind swirled with disbelief, confusion, and a strange sense of hope. I think you should apologize to Maya, Elon continued, his voice unwavering. If you don't, I'll make sure this place never opens again. I don't take kindly to people treating others like this. Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was this really happening? Did Elon Musk just threaten to shut down the restaurant over her? But before she could react, Elon turned to her. I don't know what's going on here, but I do know that you deserve better, Maya. Much better. In fact, I think you've earned a chance to build something for yourself. How would you like to work for me? The words hit her like a thunderclap. Everything seemed to slow down as she tried to comprehend what Elon was offering. Work for you, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon smiled. Yes, I'm starting a new project, and I could use someone with your skills. You deserve a future, Maya. Not just this. Tears welled in Maya's eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude, of disbelief. Just think about it, Elon said, before turning toward Greg. As for you, he added, I think you should pack up and leave. The room was deathly quiet. Greg stood there, stunned, as Elon Musk, had just changed the course of Maya's life. Maya Johnson sat in a small office in the back of the restaurant, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a cold glass of water. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound in the room, but her mind was buzzing. Had that really just happened? Elon Musk, the billionaire tech mogul, had just offered her a job. Her, a waitress at a high-end restaurant in Los Angeles. She couldn't wrap her head around it, but as she sat there, her mind drifted back, and the weight of the moment started to sink in. Maya wasn't always a star employee. In fact, growing up, she was far from the confident, ambitious woman she was becoming. She had been born in Chicago to a single mother who worked double shifts as a nurse to make ends meet. Maya's earliest memories were of helping her mom with the laundry or standing in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup as they discussed how they'd get by until the next paycheck. It was tough, but they made it work. Her father had been a brief and somewhat distant figure in her life, showing up occasionally but never sticking around. Maya didn't even remember when they stopped speaking. It just faded into the background of her life. There were moments, especially during her teenage years, when she wondered why he didn't care more about her. The answer always felt like a dead end. He was never there, and he wasn't coming back. Her mother was everything to her. Tough, loving, and determined. Maya often found herself following in her footsteps, trying to hold the family together. But unlike her mother, Maya harbored bigger dreams. Dreams of escaping the small, crowded apartment they called home. She wanted more than the life she had known. She wanted success, and not just financial success. She wanted respect, freedom, and the opportunity to be something bigger than her circumstances. When she was in high school, she made a decision. She would get a job and start saving, not for a car or the latest phone, but to get out of Chicago and move to Los Angeles, where she could make a name for herself. The idea of leaving had always felt like a distant fantasy, something for people with more money, more connections. But she didn't care. She had to try. By the time she was 18, Maya packed up her bags and left. Her mother was supportive, though worried. "You're too young to be going off on your own," her mom had said with concern, but also a quiet pride. "I'll be fine, Mom. I promise," Maya had reassured her. Los Angeles was everything and nothing like she had imagined. The city was alive, vibrant, and full of possibility, but it was also incredibly hard. The first few months were rough. Maya crashed on the couch of a friend from high school, working 2 part-time jobs at a diner and a fast food place. She barely slept, but her drive kept her going. The tips were terrible, the work grueling, but she kept pushing, kept striving for more. Every day, she told herself that this was temporary, that her big break would come soon. It wasn't long before she landed a job at the upscale restaurant in downtown LA. The place was known for its fine dining and celebrity clientele. She worked her way up from the hostess stand to waitressing. Maya had a natural ability to connect with people. Whether they were regulars or tourists, she knew how to make them feel special. She took pride in her work, and it showed. She learned the ropes quickly, and before long, Maya was one of the restaurant's most trusted employees. Her colleagues respected her for her work ethic and dedication. But she couldn't escape the subtle racism that ran beneath the surface, even in a progressive city like LA. She'd been passed over for promotions more than once in favor of less experienced servers, all because of her race. When she brought up the issue with her manager at the time, Greg Thompson, he brushed it off with a smile and a comment about company culture. She had been told to focus on her performance, to prove herself, but deep down, Maya knew the truth. She was always going to be the other. The most frustrating part? Maya was better than some of her colleagues, yet she was still overlooked. Maya couldn't help but feel that, despite all her hard work, she was always going to be stuck in the same place. Serving food, scraping by, chasing a dream that felt like it was slipping further out of reach. And then came the incident with Greg. The pressure had been building for months, but it had all come to a head that fateful day. Maya had been juggling multiple tables, dealing with rude customers, and covering for sick coworkers, but Greg didn't seem to notice. Instead, he had belittled her, humiliated her in front of a crowd, and accused her of mistakes she hadn't made. The worst part was how alone she felt. Alone in a room full of people. Alone in a city full of opportunities that felt more like closed doors. When Greg had fired her, something inside her had snapped. But now, as she sat in the small office, alone with her thoughts, something else was beginning to settle in. Elon Musk had just offered her a real chance, to build a life for herself. It was so surreal that Maya couldn't fully grasp it yet. She had gone from being dismissed by her boss to having one of the wealthiest, most influential men in the world tell her she was worth something more. She thought back to the years she'd spent working double shifts, the sacrifices, the quiet tears shed when she thought no one was watching. It was all so much bigger than she had imagined. But that wasn't even the hardest part of her story. Maya's greatest obstacle hadn't been the late nights or the constant struggle. It had been the belief that she wasn't enough. She had spent years doubting herself, not because of a lack of ability, but because of the systems stacked against her. Every time someone had told her to prove herself, or to work harder, Maya had believed them. But now, she was finally starting to see it differently. The fire that had been smoldering inside her for so long, the fire that had pushed her to leave everything behind in Chicago, was finally starting to burn brighter. Elon Musk had given her a lifeline. But it wasn't just a job offer. It was a reminder that sometimes, even when the world feels like it's against you, someone will step in and remind you that you matter, that you have value. And when that happens, it's not just about what they give you. It's about what you do next. Maya stood up, wiping away a tear that had escaped, and looked at herself in the small mirror by the office door. She wasn't that scared young girl from Chicago anymore. She wasn't the underdog waiting for someone to give her a break. She was Maya Johnson, and the world was finally starting to see her for who she really was. Maya sat in her small apartment later that night, staring blankly at her phone. The glow of the screen was the only light in the room, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. She was supposed to be excited, ecstatic even. Elon Musk had offered her a job that could change her life, a job that could take her out of the grind, out of the restaurant, and into something much bigger. But all she could feel right now was uncertainty. She hadn't told anyone yet. Not her mom, not her friends. The offer was too surreal, too much of a game changer to share without fully processing it. Elon Musk, the guy who revolutionized the electric car industry and sent people to space, wanted her to work for him. She kept going over the conversation in her mind, replaying it over and over again, like a song stuck on repeat. "Work for me?" she'd asked him, still not fully grasping the enormity of his words. "What exactly would I be doing?" "I'm starting a new project," he'd said. "I need someone who has drive, someone who's been overlooked. I think you're the one." Her phone buzzed suddenly, breaking her train of thought. She glanced down to see a message from her best friend, Lexi. "Hey girl, just checking in. How are you holding up?" Maya smiled faintly. Lexi had been her rock since the first day she'd moved to LA. They'd met at the diner, and ever since then, they'd supported each other through thick and thin. Lexi knew everything about her dreams, her struggles, and even her deepest insecurities. Maya typed quickly. "I'm okay, I think. Some crazy stuff happened at work today." She hesitated for a moment before adding the next part. "I got fired by Greg, and then Elon Musk showed up and offered me a job. I'm still kind of in shock." Lexi's reply came instantly. "What? No way. That's insane. Are you kidding me? What did you say?" Maya stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I don't know. I don't know what to think. I mean, what do I even do with an offer like that? My whole life's been in restaurants. I don't have any tech skills. What could I even do for him?" Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. "You're gonna figure it out. You've always figured it out. Elon Musk isn't handing out jobs to people who don't have the goods. You're gonna crush it." Maya read the message several times. There was a part of her that felt like Lexi was right. Maybe she could do it. Maybe she was the kind of person Elon Musk saw potential in. But another part of her felt terrified. What if she wasn't enough? What if she messed it all up? Still, deep down, something told her this was the moment she had been waiting for. She couldn't let fear hold her back. Not anymore. Maya tossed her phone onto the couch and walked to the small window in her apartment. Outside, the city of Los Angeles was alive, its lights twinkling like distant stars in the vast night sky. She had worked so hard to get here, to make a life for herself, and now, the universe seemed to be presenting her with an opportunity too big to ignore. But that was when her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Lexi. It was Greg. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the decline button. She knew what he wanted. An apology. He would probably try to smooth things over, pretend like what happened earlier in the day was just a misunderstanding. But she wasn't going to do that. She didn't owe him anything. She thought about the restaurant all night, about Greg, about the years she'd spent working there, serving tables, putting up with his attitude, dealing with his subtle racial biases. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. How dare he treat her like that? How dare he think he could humiliate her and then act like nothing happened? It wasn't just the firing. It was the way he had belittled her, as if she was expendable, as if she didn't matter. And she had let him do that for far too long. The truth was, she had been settling for so much less than she deserved. And now that she was facing the possibility of a life with Elon Musk, of actually doing something big, it all felt so much clearer. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Greg. She opened it reluctantly. "Maya, I'm sorry about earlier. I've had a chance to think things over, and I think we both overreacted. I'd like to offer you your job back. Come back in tomorrow, and we'll talk. We can sort things out." Maya stared at the message for a long time. Her finger hovered over the screen, indecision pulsing through her veins. On one hand, it felt safe to go back. She knew the routine, knew the work, knew how to navigate the stress. She could go back, apologize, and slip right back into the groove of things. She could go back to the life she had always known. But then she remembered what Elon had said to her. I think you've earned a future. Not just this. Was she really going to choose the familiar, the safe, the comfortable life of being Greg's employee again? Or was she going to take the leap and step into something unknown, something that could change everything? She put the phone down. Maya wasn't going back to that place. Not anymore. She was done. It wasn't just about the job offer. It was about reclaiming her life, her worth, and her future. She wasn't going to be the girl who let fear hold her back anymore. She wasn't going to settle. The next morning, Maya woke up early, determined. She dressed in something comfortable, jeans and a t-shirt, with a simple gold necklace that had been a gift from her mom. It wasn't flashy, but it made her feel grounded. She wasn't about to walk into a meeting with Elon Musk like a nervous wreck. No, she was going to walk in like she belonged there, like she had earned this moment. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, she didn't even look at it. She was ready. By the time she stepped out the door, a sense of clarity had settled over her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in years, she felt like she was in control of it. And that was enough. Maya stepped into the elevator of her apartment building, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the adrenaline rushing through her veins. Today was the day. The day she was going to meet Elon Musk in person. The day her life would either change forever or return to the mundane routine she had known for so long. She had gone over her resume, or what she imagined one would look like for someone in her position. She didn't have the business experience or high-level education that most of Elon's employees likely had. She was just Maya, a server from Chicago, a girl who had fought for everything she had. But there was one thing she knew for sure. She had passion, grit, and the ability to learn. Those were the things that mattered. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped out into the lobby of her building. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Lexi. You ready for this? Remember, you're a boss. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You got this. Maya smiled, her fingers flying over the screen as she typed back. Thanks, girl. I'll let you know how it goes. I think I'm more nervous than excited right now. That's normal. But remember, fear is just excitement in disguise. You're going to crush it. Maya could almost feel Lexi's infectious energy through the phone. It gave her the boost she needed. As she stepped outside, the morning sunlight felt warmer than it had in a while. There was something about today, something that made her feel that, no matter how this meeting went, she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. Her cab ride to the office was quick. Elon's office was located in one of the sleekest, most modern buildings in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of place that made her feel like an outsider just by stepping foot inside. Glass walls, polished floors, and a lobby that screamed elite. Maya stood at the elevator, waiting for it to arrive, her stomach turning in knots. What the hell am I doing here? The elevator pinged, and the doors slid open. A young woman with a clipboard greeted her as soon as she stepped inside. Ms. Johnson, welcome. Mr. Musk is expecting you, the woman said with a smile, and Maya followed her into the elevator. As the elevator shot upward, Maya's nerves returned in full force. She pressed her hands together, trying to steady her breathing. The doors opened on the top floor, and Maya followed the woman down a long corridor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. It was breathtaking, but the beauty didn't calm her nerves. If anything, it made her feel smaller. The woman stopped in front of a sleek, glass door. Mr. Musk is in there. Please go right in. With a deep breath, Maya opened the door and stepped inside. Elon Musk was sitting at a large glass desk, reviewing papers. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up with a smile. Maya, welcome. Please, have a seat. He gestured toward a chair in front of the desk, and Maya slowly moved forward, sitting down. The room was minimalist. Modern furniture, white walls, and a few sleek designs scattered around. The kind of space where people made big decisions. Important decisions. Her palms were sweating, and she was sure Elon could see how nervous she was, but she wasn't going to let it show. You're probably wondering what this is all about, Elon said, leaning back in his chair. I've been following your story a bit, hearing about your work ethic, your resilience. You're the kind of person I want to work with. Maya tried to hide her surprise, but the words hit her harder than she expected. I didn't think I had much of a story, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. You do, he said with a small smile. That's why you're here. I'm working on a new venture. It's not like anything I've done before. It's a project focused on community, on using technology and innovation to solve problems that impact everyday people. The kinds of problems that most companies overlook. And I think you could be a huge part of it. Maya's mind was racing. A new venture? Something focused on community? It sounded incredible. It sounded like everything she had dreamed about. But there was still doubt lurking in her mind. She wasn't a tech expert. She didn't have a background in business. What could she possibly contribute to something this big? I don't have the kind of experience your other employees have, Maya said, hesitating. I'm not sure I'm the right fit for a project like this. Elon studied her for a moment, his gaze sharp but thoughtful. That's exactly why I need you, he said, leaning forward. I'm not looking for more people who are stuck in the same mindset. I'm looking for someone who has raw potential, someone who isn't afraid to think differently, someone who's willing to take risks and isn't afraid to fail, because failure is part of the process. Maya blinked, stunned by his words. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Failure is part of the process? That was something she could understand. It was something she had lived. She wasn't used to being told she had potential. She had always been told to prove herself, to work harder, to show she was worthy of a seat at the table. But Elon Musk was telling her the opposite. He wasn't asking her to prove herself. He was telling her she was already good enough, just the way she was. What would I be doing? She finally asked, her voice quieter now, her nerves starting to fade. I want you to help lead this project, Elon replied, his eyes intense. It's about using innovation to solve real-world problems. Maybe we'll build affordable housing, or create solutions for sustainable food, or find ways to help communities build their own tech infrastructure. The details are still coming together, but what I need is someone with vision, someone who knows what it's like to struggle, to work hard and face obstacles, someone who can inspire others to believe that the impossible is possible. Maya could barely contain the rush of emotion that surged through her. This wasn't just a job offer. This was an invitation to change the world. She could feel her chest tighten with excitement. For so long, she had felt stuck, like there was no way out. But now she could see a way forward. A way out. A way up. What would my role be? She asked, trying to focus. Her mind was still racing. Your title would be Community Innovation Lead, Elon said. You'll help develop the strategy for how we can use technology and resources to empower people, give them the tools they need to thrive, and break down barriers that have been in place for too long. I want you to bring your experience, your understanding of how tough life can be, to this. The people we help need to see someone like them succeed, and that's where you come in. Maya nodded slowly, trying to absorb the magnitude of what he was saying. This was real. She wasn't dreaming. You'll have a team of experts to guide you, Elon added. But this project needs someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked, someone who has lived it. That's why I need you. Maya took a deep breath. Everything she had worked for, everything she had fought for, was leading to this moment. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady now, no hint of doubt. I'll help make it happen. Elon smiled, a satisfied grin. I knew you would. The days following her meeting with Elon Musk were a blur of paperwork, excitement, and doubt. Maya had agreed to join Elon's new venture, the one that would tackle real-world problems using innovative technology and community-driven solutions. Her head was spinning with all the new information, the new opportunities, and the weight of what she was about to undertake. She hadn't been able to fully wrap her mind around it. She had spent years serving tables, scraping by, trying to stay afloat, and now here she was, on the brink of stepping into a leadership role in one of the most ambitious projects of the century. But with the excitement, there was also an overwhelming sense of fear. Could she actually do this? What if she was in over her head? What if she failed? In those moments, doubt crept in like a shadow. Her mind replayed the voices of those who had doubted her, Greg's words, the rejection letters from job applications that hadn't even been considered, the stares of customers who judged her based on her race. She wasn't used to being the one chosen. She wasn't used to feeling like she belonged at the table. But that morning, the fear had been too much. She couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready for all of this. Maybe this was all too big. Maybe she would screw it up. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. The woman in the mirror didn't seem like the same woman who had stepped into that office a week ago. She didn't even feel like the same woman who had walked out of the restaurant after Greg fired her. It was like something inside her had shifted, and she didn't know if she liked the person she was becoming. The text she had received from Lexi a few hours earlier didn't help either. "You good? You seem quiet. You've got this, but if you need to talk, I'm here." Maya hadn't responded. She didn't want to admit to anyone that she was struggling with the enormity of it all. She felt like an imposter. How could someone like her, someone who had spent years just trying to get by, lead a revolutionary project that could change lives? Her phone buzzed again. She glanced down, and this time it was a message from Elon. "Meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Be ready. We're diving into the next phase." Maya stared at the message, her stomach twisting. She felt her heart race, her palms sweating. She could feel the pressure mounting. Be ready. The words echoed in her mind, a challenge and a reminder that there was no going back. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I've done hard things before," she reminded herself. She had faced rejection, dealt with adversity, fought for every inch of ground she had gained. This was no different. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the unknown. The next morning, Maya arrived at Elon's office early. The sleek glass doors to the building looked almost intimidating as she stepped inside. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts and worries about what was ahead. When she entered the conference room, Elon was already there, along with a small group of his senior team members. There were tech experts, business strategists, and a few people who had been working on the project for months. Maya felt a wave of insecurity rush over her as she walked into the room. "Glad you could make it," Elon said with a warm smile. "Everyone, this is Maya Johnson, our new community innovation lead." "Maya, this is the team." Maya nodded at the people in the room, her throat tight as she tried to hold back the fear that was threatening to overwhelm her. They all seemed so experienced, so confident. The stark contrast between her and them was hard to ignore. But as she looked around the room, she realized something that made her heart skip a beat. These people weren't here just because of their degrees or their pedigrees. They were here because they believed in the project, and now she was part of it. They weren't looking at her because she didn't have the same credentials or resume as them. They were looking at her because they believed in the mission. As the meeting began, Elon outlined the next steps for the project. The team discussed everything from sustainable energy solutions to tech-driven education initiatives. Maya was mostly quiet at first, listening intently as the others contributed their ideas. But as the conversation grew more focused, something inside her clicked. She had spent so many years working in the restaurant industry, talking to people from all walks of life. She had listened to their struggles and their dreams. She knew what they needed. She knew what it was like to feel powerless and overlooked. She understood that change wasn't just about technology. It was about empathy, connection, and lifting up the people who were often forgotten. "Actually," Maya said, surprising herself with her sudden boldness, "I think we need to rethink how we approach the community aspect. It's not just about implementing tech solutions for people. It's about involving them in the process. We need to give them ownership, not just tools. If we want real change, we have to make sure the people we're helping have a voice." There was a pause. The room went quiet as everyone processed what she had said. Maya held her breath, her pulse racing. She wasn't sure if it was the right thing to say, but she had to speak up. Finally, Elon nodded. "That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. We need more than just technical solutions. We need leaders who understand the human side of things." "Maya, you're right. That's the direction we're heading in." The weight of his words hit her like a wave, and for the first time in days, Maya felt a surge of confidence. Later that day, Maya found herself walking out of the building, her thoughts still swirling. She had spoken up. She had contributed something meaningful. She had belonged in that room, surrounded by experts and professionals. She had faced her fears and, for the first time, she hadn't backed down. As she walked to the subway, her phone buzzed. She glanced down to see a message from Lexi. Told you you'd crush it today. Proud of you, girl. Let me know how it went. Maya's lips curved into a smile as she typed back. You were right. I think I'm starting to believe in myself, too. It was the first time she had said it aloud. The first time she had allowed herself to believe it. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. She wasn't just the girl who had been overlooked. She was Maya Johnson, and she was ready to change the world. Maya was beginning to feel a shift in herself, a new confidence that she hadn't known existed. Every morning, she woke up to the buzzing excitement of a life she'd never imagined was possible. She was part of something bigger than herself now, and as daunting as it was, there was an undeniable sense of pride that came with knowing she was no longer just a bystander in her own life. But, as the days passed, her excitement started to be tempered by a rising sense of pressure. With the responsibility of leading a groundbreaking project came immense expectations. There were meetings with stakeholders, endless brainstorming sessions, and countless hours spent in front of screens, reviewing data and fine-tuning strategies. The magnitude of what she was helping to build was always lurking at the edge of her thoughts. And as much as she had enjoyed the first few days, the weight of it all was beginning to sink in. In a meeting on a particularly hot Tuesday morning, Maya could feel the intensity in the air. Elon's team was pushing hard for results. Everyone had a vision for how things should go, and they weren't shy about sharing their opinions. Some of the tech experts in the room were arguing over the best way to implement an AI-driven solution for sustainable housing, while others were more focused on the community engagement aspect. It was the first time since her meeting with Elon that she felt out of her depth. Look, we need a concrete answer by the end of the day. One of the lead engineers, Carter, said, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. We can't keep debating this forever. We need to know where we stand on the tech side of things. The timeline is already tight. Maya shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her stomach churned. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was mounting. Carter's right. Another team member, Sasha, chimed in. We can't move forward without knowing the core of the system. We're dealing with limited resources, and if we don't have a solution soon, we're not going to make the deadlines. Everyone around the table nodded in agreement, and Maya felt her heart race. She wasn't a tech expert. She wasn't an engineer or a scientist. How could she, with her limited experience, have a say in the direction they were heading? Her mind raced for something to say. She had to speak up. They needed her input. But what could she possibly offer? That's true, she said, her voice coming out more hesitant than she'd like. But, we also need to think about the people who will be affected by these decisions. I mean, the community we're building for. We can't just impose solutions on them without understanding their real needs. It's not just about tech, it's about people. If we forget that, we're missing the point. The room fell silent. A few people exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond to her statement. Elon, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, watching the conversation unfold, finally spoke up. Maya's right, he said, his tone firm but encouraging. I know the tech side is critical, but we also need a deep understanding of the people we're trying to help. The solution isn't just going to come from a set of algorithms or code. We need to think about the human element. Maya felt a flicker of hope at his words. Maybe she was starting to find her place here after all. But then, as quickly as it came, the hope faded. Carter leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. I get that, but we can't keep delaying things. We're already behind. We need actionable steps now. Maya's pulse quickened. She wanted to argue, to stand her ground, but the pressure was mounting, and she felt small in a room full of experts. Elon raised a hand, signaling for everyone to quiet down. All right, let's take a step back. Maya, what do you suggest we do next? Maya blinked. The question hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, she froze. This was the moment, the test, her moment to prove herself. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on her, waiting. She had to say something, something that would help steer the conversation, something that would show she wasn't just an outsider here, that she had a vision, too. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, trying to ground herself. Okay, she began, her voice still shaky but gaining strength with every word. We have the tech side of things, which is obviously important, But I think what we need to do right now is identify the core issues that the community is facing. We need to understand what the real problems are before we implement any solutions. What's the point of building something if it doesn't serve the people we're trying to help? There was another brief silence before Sasha spoke up again. That sounds great, but how do you propose we do that? We don't have months to survey everyone. We don't have the time or the budget for long-term fieldwork. I'm not saying we need to do everything at once, Maya replied quickly, but we can start small. We can talk to people in existing communities that are facing these issues. Maybe we can partner with local organizations, do some field interviews, understand their daily struggles. This way, we're not just guessing what they need. We're asking them directly. The team members exchanged uncertain glances. It was clear that they were used to operating in a fast-paced, solution-driven environment. The idea of taking a step back to gather feedback from the community wasn't exactly in line with their usual approach. Elon sat quietly for a moment, his eyes focused on Maya. Then, finally, he nodded. I think we can make that work, he said, his voice calm and authoritative. We'll set up some outreach efforts, talk to the people on the ground. Maya, I'll leave the logistics to you and the team. Let's see what we can learn. A sense of relief washed over Maya as she realized that Elon was supporting her idea. But even as the team agreed to move forward with the outreach plan, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. There was more at stake than just a new project. This was her moment to prove that she belonged here, that she could be more than just a figurehead. That evening, as Maya walked out of the office, her mind raced. For the first time since she joined Elon's team, she felt like she had made a real contribution. But the pressure hadn't let up. If anything, it had intensified. This wasn't just about her. This was about proving to the world, and to herself, that she was capable of handling everything that was coming her way. But as she walked through the city streets, a strange sense of clarity washed over her. She could do this. She had already faced challenges far greater than the ones ahead. It wasn't about the technology. It wasn't about the timelines. It was about the people, the community. And that was something Maya understood better than anyone. The days blurred into weeks as Maya threw herself into her new role. She had become a whirlwind of meetings, strategy sessions, and endless emails. The pressure, once daunting, had begun to feel like a constant companion, but she was managing. Each day, she pushed herself a little further, learning more than she ever thought possible about the intersection of technology, social impact, and community-driven development. Her initial excitement had evolved into something else, a steady determination. Maya was no longer the quiet outsider in Elon Musk's team. She was becoming a voice that people listened to, a voice that had a unique perspective, a perspective that had grown out of her own experiences of struggle and resilience. But, as the days passed, something else began to happen. The weight of the responsibility she had taken on started to seep into her personal life. It wasn't just the late nights at the office or the endless brainstorming sessions. It was the emotional toll of trying to balance everything. Her apartment had become a blur of takeout containers, unwashed laundry, and half-written notes scattered across her desk. She was burning the candle at both ends, putting every ounce of herself into the project, but at what cost? The stress was beginning to take its toll. One night, Maya sat at her kitchen table, staring at her laptop. The blinking cursor on the document she was working on seemed to mock her, each empty line an indication of just how much she had left to do. Her phone buzzed beside her, and for a moment, she ignored it. The last thing she wanted was another notification about work. But then she saw the name on the screen, Lexi. Hey, how's everything going? You haven't been answering my texts. You okay? The message read. Maya felt a pang of guilt. Lexi had been her rock through all of this, the one person who understood the pressure she was under. And now, she was letting her friend slip away. With a sigh, Maya typed back quickly, I'm fine. Just really swamped with work. Lie, she thought. But she didn't have the energy to explain it all. Not tonight. Lexi replied almost instantly, That's what you always say. But I know you're not. I can hear it in your voice when we talk. You're killing yourself trying to make this work, but you don't have to do it all alone, Maya. You know that, right? Maya stared at the message for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keys. Could Lexi understand? Could anyone understand what it felt like to stand at the edge of a project that had the potential to change the world, and yet feel like she might break at any moment? She pressed her phone to her forehead. The reality was, she didn't feel like she was doing it alone. She had a team, a whole company behind her, pushing her to succeed. But in many ways, that made the pressure even worse. She typed back a single response, "I know. I just need to get through this one step at a time. I just need to get through this." The next morning, Maya arrived at the office, her usual sense of resolve somewhat diminished. As she entered the sleek glass building, she was greeted by a familiar sense of isolation. It had been weeks since she had felt truly grounded, and every part of her seemed to be aching for a break. She stepped into the conference room, where the rest of the team had already gathered. Elon was speaking with Carter, pointing at a large screen filled with data projections for the next phase of the project. "Good morning," Maya said, offering a tight smile. "Good morning, Maya," Elon replied, always warm, always supportive. "I was just going over some figures with Carter. We're hitting some bumps with the logistics side. You're up next on the agenda. Ready to talk about outreach?" Maya nodded, her mind still reeling from the night before. She shuffled her notes, trying to focus. "Yeah, we've started gathering input from community organizations, and we've already received some interesting feedback." She went on to explain the results of the outreach campaign, the partnerships they had forged with local nonprofits, and the progress they had made in engaging community leaders. For a moment, she could feel herself slipping into autopilot, her usual confidence starting to return. But just as she was about to move to the next topic, Carter interrupted. "Wait, Maya. You're saying we're getting feedback, but how do we know this feedback is actionable? We're running out of time. These interviews aren't going to build us a working model. We need concrete data." Maya felt a surge of frustration rise in her chest, but she kept it in check. Carter's tone was dismissive, like he thought she wasn't taking this seriously. He wasn't wrong about the urgency of the project, but that didn't mean his approach was the only way forward. "I understand the need for speed, Carter," Maya replied, trying to stay calm. "But we can't rush this part. If we don't listen to what the communities are telling us, if we don't build solutions that actually reflect their needs, we might as well not do anything at all. That's why we're gathering this feedback, to ensure we're building something that works for them." There was a long silence. Elon, who had been watching the exchange with interest, finally spoke. "I think Maya's point is important," he said. "We can't afford to bypass the human element. The timeline is tight, but if we don't get this right from the start, we'll be wasting everyone's time." Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. For a moment, she wasn't sure how the team would react. Carter's impatience had been evident, but Elon's backing felt like a shield against the pressure. After a long pause, Carter gave a begrudging nod. "Fine, we'll adjust the approach, but we can't afford to delay any longer." By the end of the meeting, Maya felt like she had weathered a storm, but the toll it had taken was visible. She was tired. Her head ached. There were too many voices, too many opinions, all fighting for attention, and she could feel herself being pulled in every direction. As she walked out of the conference room, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass wall. The woman staring back at her didn't look like the confident leader she had been just a week ago. She looked worn. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Lexi. "I know you're swamped, but I'm really worried about you. When was the last time you took a break? We need to hang out, Maya. You're burning out." For a moment, Maya felt a wave of emotion crash over her. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind, and she hadn't stopped long enough to realize just how much she needed a break. But Lexi was right. She couldn't keep going like this forever. "I can't let myself fall apart. Not now." She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breath. She was holding it all together. At least, that's what she told herself. But something inside her was starting to crack. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't have it all figured out. But she knew one thing. She couldn't do this alone. Not anymore. With a deep sigh, Maya typed a response to Lexi. "You're right. Let's do something this weekend. I need to breathe." The weekend came faster than Maya expected, but even as she made plans with Lexi to take a break, her mind continued to race. Her phone buzzed with messages from her team, reminders about the ongoing outreach efforts, deadlines that loomed large, and updates on project milestones. No matter how hard she tried to disconnect, the weight of the work was always there, just beneath the surface. Maya didn't want to admit it, but she had begun to feel like a machine. Each day bled into the next, and the exhaustion was becoming harder to ignore. Despite the fact that she had pushed herself so hard to get to this point, there were moments when she felt like she wasn't enough. Still, she wasn't about to let anyone see how much she was struggling. She'd always been the one who handled things on her own, even when life got overwhelming. This new project, the one with Elon Musk and all its promise, was the opportunity of a lifetime, and she couldn't afford to show weakness. Not now. Not when so many people were counting on her. On Saturday morning, Maya met Lexi at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, a small, cozy place she used to frequent when she had more time for herself. The moment Lexi saw her, she raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of concern and surprise. "You look like you haven't slept in days," Lexi said, pulling out a chair for Maya to sit. "You okay?" Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just busy." Lexi didn't buy it. "Busy doesn't look like that," she said, gesturing to Maya's tired eyes and the way her shoulders were slumped. "Come on, Maya. Talk to me. You've been running on empty for weeks. You can't keep doing this to yourself." Maya sighed, looking down at the coffee menu without really seeing it. "I know. I don't want to let anyone down. It's a huge opportunity, Lexi. And it's not just about me anymore. It's about all the people who are counting on us to get this right." Lexi's eyes softened. "Maya, you've always been there for people. You've always had their backs. But you can't help anyone if you're not taking care of yourself. You're running yourself ragged, and I'm worried." Maya bit her lip, her hands shaking slightly as she picked up her coffee cup. The warmth of it didn't do much to settle the growing storm inside her. She'd spent so many years just surviving, fighting to get to this point. And now, as she finally had a seat at the table, she was terrified that she might fall short. That maybe she wasn't enough. "I don't know how to stop, Lexi," Maya admitted quietly, the words finally coming out. "It feels like if I stop, everything will fall apart. Like if I don't give everything I have to this, I'm going to disappoint people. And I can't do that." Lexi leaned across the table, her voice low but firm. "You're not going to disappoint anyone by taking a break. You're not a machine, Maya. You're human. You've worked so hard to get here, but you can't keep going like this. If you burn out, it'll hurt the project. It'll hurt you. And you deserve to be healthy. You deserve to have time for yourself, too." Maya's throat tightened. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words until now. She had been so focused on the mission, on proving herself, that she had forgotten the most important thing, taking care of herself. I don't want to mess it all up," Maya said, her voice shaky. "This project, it could change everything. People are counting on me. Elon is counting on me." Lexi reached over and gently placed a hand on hers. "Elon is a visionary, yeah, but he's not expecting you to be superhuman. He's counting on you to bring your perspective, your heart, your authenticity. That's why you're here. Don't lose that in the process of trying to do everything perfectly." Maya let out a shaky breath, her emotions on the verge of spilling over. She had been so focused on the perfect version of herself, the version that could handle it all, that she had forgotten what made her capable in the first place. Her heart, her humanity. She didn't need to be flawless to make a difference. She just needed to be herself. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of conversation, laughter, and much-needed time away from the demands of her role. Lexi did what she did best, helping Maya reconnect with the simple joys of life. They walked around the city, had a late lunch at a local park, and talked about everything that wasn't work. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt like she could breathe. The constant tension in her chest had loosened, just a little. She wasn't fixed, but she had found a sliver of peace. When she returned to her apartment later that evening, Maya felt a renewed sense of clarity. She could see the path ahead of her more clearly. She knew what she had to do. The following week, as the team gathered for another meeting, the atmosphere was different. Maya felt stronger, more grounded. She had spent the last few days recalibrating, making sure she was eating properly, getting some sleep, and finding moments of stillness. The work still needed to be done, but she realized that her ability to do it well depended on her taking care of herself first. She walked into the conference room with a quiet confidence, ready to take on the challenges ahead. Elon was already there, waiting with his usual intensity, but today he seemed more approachable, like he was aware of the pressure the team had been under. "All right, team," Elon began. "We're at a critical juncture in this project. The outreach efforts are going well, but we need to make sure we're moving quickly to the next phase. Time's running short, and we need to maximize every resource we have." Maya nodded, taking her seat at the table. As Elon spoke, she let his words sink in. This was it, the moment to make things happen. But this time, Maya knew she wasn't going to lose herself in the process. When it was her turn to speak, Maya stood tall. "I want to reiterate that the community feedback we've gathered so far is invaluable. It's not just data, it's insight. These people don't just want a solution. They want to be a part of the process. And we have to make sure that happens, or we risk building something that won't truly serve their needs." Elon raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Go on." Maya felt the familiar rush of excitement take over as she spoke, no longer hesitant, no longer unsure. "We've been so focused on the technical aspects of this project, but the real work comes when we engage the people who will be affected. We have to find ways to integrate them into every part of the process, not just as recipients of aid, but as partners in change. That's how we'll build something sustainable." The room fell silent as the team absorbed her words. For a moment, Maya wondered if she had gone too far, if she had stepped out of line. But then Elon leaned forward, nodding thoughtfully. "I think you're absolutely right," he said. "Let's do it. We'll work on making the community engagement more central to everything we do. Maya, I want you to take the lead on that. Let's make sure we get this right." Maya's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the opportunity to lead in a way that reflected her values, her vision, and her understanding of the human side of change. And for the first time in weeks, she felt at peace with what lay ahead. Maya's confidence was still fresh from the meeting with Elon. Taking the lead on community engagement felt like a huge responsibility, but it also felt like a natural fit for her. She had spent her entire career learning how to listen, how to understand people from all walks of life. Now, she had the chance to put that knowledge into practice on a global scale. Yet, as the week wore on, the weight of her new role started to creep back in. Despite her efforts to stay grounded, the pressure was relentless. The team had started making rapid decisions, moving through milestones faster than ever before. The relentless pace was wearing her down. The once clear lines of communication were starting to blur, and small cracks in the plan began to show. Maya had just left another intense strategy session when her phone buzzed. The message was from Carter. "Can you meet me in my office in 10? Maya's stomach sank. Carter hadn't exactly been supportive of her new direction with community outreach, and every conversation with him felt like a battle. She could already feel the tension building in her chest. He was about to push back again. She just knew it. When Maya arrived at his office, she found Carter sitting behind his desk, looking more frustrated than usual. He didn't waste any time. "Maya, we need to talk about the direction of this project," Carter said, without looking up from his screen. "I know you're passionate about community engagement, but this focus on getting everyone involved, it's slowing things down. We need results, not another round of focus groups." Maya clenched her jaw, trying to keep her cool. "Carter, I've told you, we can't just rush through this. The community has to be at the center of this project. Otherwise, we're building something that won't be sustainable." He finally looked up, his face a mask of frustration. "I get it, but we're on the clock here, Maya. Every day we waste talking to community leaders or gathering more opinions is another day this project gets further delayed. You're so focused on making everyone happy that you're losing sight of the bigger picture." Maya felt the familiar heat rising in her chest. She knew she was right. She wasn't just trying to make people happy. She was trying to build something real, something that had impact beyond the numbers on a spreadsheet. But Carter couldn't see it. He never could. "You want results?" Maya said, her voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside her. "Then let's make sure the results we get are actually meaningful. Otherwise, we're just checking boxes." For a moment, Carter said nothing. His eyes narrowed as if he was trying to figure out her angle. But then he leaned back in his chair, clearly annoyed. I'm just trying to make sure we don't end up with another project that's all talk and no action. That's not what anyone wants. I'm not here to talk, Maya shot back. I'm here to make sure the action we take is the right action. The silence between them was thick with unspoken tension. It was a battle of wills, and neither one was backing down. Carter crossed his arms, his tone turning cold. Fine, but just remember, there's a limit to how much time we can spend on your vision of this project. The board wants results, not more delays. Maya bit her lip, suppressing the urge to snap back. She didn't have the energy for another fight, not today. I'll make sure we're moving forward. But I'm not going to compromise on the community aspect. Carter gave her a dismissive look before turning his attention back to his screen. Whatever. Just get it done. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Maya found herself distracted, her thoughts spinning around the conversation with Carter. She had known from the start that not everyone would be on board with her vision. But the tension was starting to feel unbearable, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep going without breaking. That night, she found herself unable to sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing with thoughts of the project, the community, and the growing friction within the team. It was as if the very thing she was working to build was starting to tear itself apart from the inside. The pressure was closing in, and Maya wasn't sure she could hold it all together for much longer. At 3 a.m., Maya got up from her bed, unable to stay still. She sat at her desk, staring at the proposal she had been working on for the past few days. It was supposed to be her pitch for how the team could engage with community leaders in a more sustainable, long-term way. But every time she tried to get her thoughts onto paper, the words felt hollow. She rubbed her eyes, frustration mounting. The project she had worked so hard for, something that had started as a dream, a vision of meaningful change, was now on the verge of becoming another corporate product. A product to be sold, to be consumed, and to be measured. And what would be left behind? Would the community have a real stake in this? Or would they just be another footnote in the success story? Maya leaned back in her chair, letting her thoughts run wild. She had to do something. She had to find a way to steer this ship back on course before it was too late. She couldn't let this turn into another tech project that only benefited a select few. The community she had met during her outreach efforts, those people, they deserved more than that. But how could she convince the team? How could she get them to understand that building with people, not just for them, was the key to creating something lasting? Her phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Lexi. Hey, you still up? I can hear the stress in your texts. Talk to me. Maya sighed and texted back, just thinking about everything. The project, the team, the way it's all going. I'm feeling like I'm losing control. A few moments later, Lexi's response came, You're not losing control, Maya. You're just figuring out how to take control in a way that works for you. You're trying to do something huge here. But you don't have to do it all at once. Maya stared at the message, the words sinking in. Maybe Lexi was right. Maybe she was so focused on getting everything perfect that she hadn't allowed herself to breathe, to step back and see the bigger picture. Maybe it wasn't about doing it all at once. Maybe it was about finding the right moments to push and the right moments to wait. Her phone buzzed again. Lexi's text, and remember, you're not alone. You have a team, and you have me. Maya smiled to herself, the weight on her shoulders lightening just a little. Maybe she didn't have all the answers, but that didn't mean she had to figure it out by herself. The next morning, Maya woke up with a sense of clarity she hadn't had in weeks. The road ahead was still full of challenges, but she felt ready to face them. She wasn't going to give up on her vision, but maybe she needed to be more strategic about how to bring everyone on board. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. Not with Lexi in her corner, not with Elon's backing, and not with the people who had started to believe in the potential of the project. Now, all she needed was the courage to fight for what was right, and the strength to hold her ground. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? By the time the team gathered for the next big strategy meeting, Maya was feeling cautiously optimistic. She had spent the past few days reworking her approach to the community outreach initiative, making it more aligned with the broader goals of the project without compromising on her core belief that people needed to be at the heart of it all. She had done what she could to calm the storm inside, but deep down, she knew this next meeting would be a pivotal moment. It was time to confront the divide between her vision and the team's expectations head-on. The room buzzed with energy as the team filed in. Everyone was there: Carter, Elon, the engineers, the outreach specialists. Maya sat at the head of the table, her laptop open but her mind somewhere else. She could feel the weight of the moment settling into her chest. As Elon entered, the room quieted. He gave Maya a brief, almost imperceptible nod as he took his seat at the front of the table, his eyes sharp, as usual, taking in every detail. Maya steeled herself. She had to present a solution today, a path forward that would satisfy both her commitment to community engagement and the team's desire for concrete results. The stakes had never been higher. "All right, everyone," Elon said, his voice cutting through the room. "We're all on a tight timeline, so let's dive in. Maya, you've been working on an updated plan for the community integration. Let's hear it." Maya stood up, taking a deep breath as she moved to the whiteboard at the front of the room. For a second, she wished she could just retreat into the shadows. But that wasn't an option anymore. The room was watching her. Her team. Her vision. It all came down to this. "I've spent the past few days refining our approach," she began, her voice steady but resolute. "I understand the urgency, and I know we can't afford endless delays. But we can't sacrifice the integrity of the project either. We need the community to be partners in this, not just passive recipients." She turned to the whiteboard and began to write down key points: collaborative design, long-term engagement, local leadership, impact assessment. "We need to work with the community, not just for them," Maya continued. "This isn't just about presenting them with a finished product. It's about co-creating something sustainable. We have to involve local leaders in the design process and commit to regular check-ins to adjust the project based on feedback. Only then can we be sure this will have lasting impact." Carter shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and Maya noticed the skepticism in his eyes. She braced herself. "Hold on," Carter interrupted, his voice laced with impatience. "I get that you want to make this look good, Maya, but we don't have the luxury of time to co-create every step of the way. What we need is a plan that can scale quickly and effectively." Maya held his gaze, her resolve strengthening. "This isn't about looking good, Carter. This is about building something real. If we don't bring the community into the process, they'll feel left out. And without their buy-in, we risk the project's success from the very start. It's not just a luxury, it's essential." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Elon's eyes narrowed as he watched the exchange. Maya couldn't tell if he was going to back her or not. "I agree with Maya," Elon said after a long pause, his voice calm but firm. "A project like this needs to be grounded in real feedback. The people it affects should have a say in how it unfolds. We'll never achieve real, sustainable change if we don't start there." Maya felt a small sense of relief wash over her, but it was short-lived. Carter's eyes flashed with irritation, but he stayed quiet. "Fine," Carter said with a heavy sigh. "But we need milestones. I need deadlines. No more open-ended timelines. If we're moving forward with this, I want solid goals, clear metrics. This isn't a charity project, it's a business venture, and we need to deliver results." Maya nodded, though she knew this wouldn't be easy. The tension between her idealism and the team's pragmatism was palpable, but it wasn't a battle she was willing to lose. She had to find a way to make both sides work. "We can have both," she said, feeling a renewed determination. "Clear metrics, measurable results, but with a framework for long-term engagement. It's not either slash or, it's both. We'll outline specific milestones for community engagement, track progress, and adjust as we go. That way, we ensure we're building something scalable and meaningful." Elon seemed satisfied with her response, nodding thoughtfully. "All right, let's move forward with that. Maya, make sure you coordinate with the team on the specific deliverables for community involvement and have a draft plan ready by next week." Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment, though the battle was far from over. The road ahead would still be challenging, but this was a breakthrough. For the first time, the team seemed aligned, at least on the surface. As the meeting wrapped up, Maya gathered her things, feeling both exhausted and energized. She had fought for her vision, and while there was still a long way to go, today felt like a victory. Later that evening, Maya found herself reflecting on the meeting, her mind running through everything that had transpired. She had won the argument, but the tension with Carter was far from resolved. He wasn't the type to back down easily, and she knew that this wouldn't be the last time they clashed over priorities. But for now, she had found a way to move forward. She sat in her apartment, the glow of her laptop screen the only light in the room. Her fingers hovered over the keys as she began drafting the community engagement proposal, outlining specific milestones and timelines, just as Carter had demanded. But she refused to compromise on the heart of the plan. She wouldn't let it become just another corporate checklist. The phone buzzed beside her, breaking her concentration. It was a text from Lexi. "How did it go today?" "You good." Maya smiled as she read the message. She quickly typed back, "It went well. Got a lot of support from Elon, but Carter is still pushing back. It's not over yet, but I'm feeling good about it." Lexi replied almost immediately, "You've got this, girl. You're doing the right thing. Don't let him wear you down." Maya took a deep breath, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. She knew the next few weeks would be critical. But no matter how hard Carter pushed, no matter how difficult the road became, Maya was determined to stay true to her vision. She wasn't just building a project. She was building a movement that was about more than just technology. It was about people, and that was a fight worth winning. The next few weeks felt like a blur of meetings, emails, and endless revisions. Maya poured everything she had into refining the community engagement plan, balancing the team's demands for speed with her commitment to meaningful participation. Every day felt like a new battle, with Carter pressing harder for concrete metrics while Maya pushed back for deeper, more intentional involvement with the community. But even as Maya worked tirelessly, a nagging sense of unease kept pulling at her. It wasn't just the mounting pressure of the project, it was something bigger, something subtle, but growing. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the project was veering into territory she had feared. It was starting to feel like a corporate initiative that wasn't truly for the people, but rather about them, about numbers, profits, and deadlines. She couldn't let that happen. And then, there was the unexpected. One morning, Maya received an urgent email with the subject line, "Urgent, Critical Community Partnership Decision." Her stomach churned as she opened it, already dreading what it might say. The email was from a major community organization that had been a key partner in the initiative, one that Maya had worked hard to cultivate a relationship with. They were pulling out. Maya read the email several times, each pass making her heart sink further. The organization, a large network of community leaders focused on social justice and local empowerment, had expressed concerns over the project's direction. They felt that the scope was too narrow and that their voices weren't truly being heard in the planning stages. The email concluded with a firm statement that they could no longer be involved. Maya stared at the screen, feeling the weight of their withdrawal like a physical blow. This was the kind of setback that could derail the entire project. Without their backing, the community's trust would be harder to win, and the initiative would likely lose its legitimacy. Before she could even process the news fully, her phone buzzed with a text from Lexi. "Heard about the partner issue. What's going on?" Maya took a deep breath and typed back, "I just got the email. They're pulling out of the project. They don't feel like their voices are being heard, and I think they're right. This is the first major hurdle." Lexi's reply came swiftly, "This is tough, but you'll figure it out. You've always been able to rebuild relationships. What's the next step?" Maya stared at the message, but the words didn't come easily. The next step? She wasn't sure anymore. She had spent so much time trying to push the project forward, to keep everything on track, that she hadn't paused to listen to the deeper concerns the community had. The truth was, she was just as invested in the project's success as anyone else, and that was starting to cloud her judgment. She stood up from her desk, pacing around her small apartment. The weight of the decision felt unbearable. If she didn't address this issue head-on, the project's credibility could crumble, and she might lose the community's trust for good. She needed to act fast, and she needed to be transparent. That afternoon, Maya called an emergency meeting with Elon, Carter, and the outreach team. As everyone settled in around the conference table, the tension was palpable. No one spoke at first, and Maya could feel the pressure mounting with each passing second. She cleared her throat and took a deep breath. "I have some bad news," she began, glancing around at the team. "One of our key community partners has decided to pull out of the project. They've expressed concerns about the direction we're taking, specifically that we haven't made enough space for their input, and they don't believe the project is truly collaborative." There was a stunned silence in the room. "I knew there were growing concerns," Maya continued, "but I didn't realize how deeply the issue had affected them. I'm worried this could escalate. If we don't fix this quickly, it could have a ripple effect on the other partners." Elon leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What do you need from us to resolve this?" Maya hesitated. "I need us to be willing to shift gears. We need to do more than just engage with the community. We need to empower them. If we don't make this change, we'll lose not just this partner, but potentially the trust of the people we're trying to serve." Carter crossed his arms, clearly frustrated. "Maya, I don't think this is the time to go back to the drawing board. We've already invested so much into the current plan. Making drastic changes now could delay everything." "I understand that, Carter," Maya said, her voice steady but firm. "But if we don't take this seriously, we risk undermining everything we've built. The success of this project isn't just about hitting deadlines. It's about creating something that lasts. And we can't do that without the community's real involvement." Elon sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled together as he thought. Maya's right. The last thing we want is to alienate people. But Carter makes a valid point too. Delays will be costly. So how do we fix this without throwing everything off track? Maya paused, her mind racing. There had to be a way to make both sides work. "I think we need to bring in a new layer of community leadership. I'm not just talking about meeting with a few key leaders. We need a group of local advisors who will sit at the table with us during the planning process, not just after. We need to open up more direct lines of communication and commit to regularly checking in with the community as the project progresses." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "That's an interesting idea. It might be exactly what we need to reframe how we're approaching this. I want a more detailed proposal on that, Maya. Let's review it next week." Maya's shoulders relaxed slightly. This was the opportunity she needed. Now she had a chance to rebuild the project's credibility and restore the community's trust. Carter didn't seem entirely convinced, but he didn't argue. He knew the stakes were too high to ignore the problem entirely. "Fine," he muttered, "but we'll need concrete results from this shift. No more abstract engagement. I want metrics. I want data." "I can work with that," Maya replied, grateful for Elon's support. "I'll make sure we have clear, measurable objectives for the community integration. But I need everyone's commitment to this." The meeting ended soon after, but Maya's mind didn't stop. The real work was just beginning. She had taken the first step to rebuild the trust that had been fractured. It wouldn't be easy, and it would require more compromises along the way, but it was a necessary sacrifice. That night, as Maya sat at her desk, drafting the proposal for the new community leadership structure, a message from Lexi popped up on her phone. "You're doing great. Don't forget, this is just one hurdle. You've handled worse before. I believe in you." Maya smiled as she read the message. It was just the kind of encouragement she needed. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but she was fighting for something real, something that mattered. And that made every hurdle worth jumping. The next few days were a whirlwind. Maya was back in full action mode, working late into the nights drafting proposals, refining outreach plans, and preparing for the meeting with the new community advisors. She'd taken the feedback seriously and knew this was the turning point. The partnership with the local leaders could make or break the project, and she had to be prepared for anything. But even as Maya dove into the technicalities of her plan, she knew that this meeting would be different. It wasn't just about policies and deadlines anymore. It was about bridging the gap between a project that, despite its good intentions, had alienated the very people it sought to help. By Friday morning, Maya had a refined proposal, one that included a detailed breakdown of the new community leadership structure. She had included clear guidelines for their involvement in both the decision-making and ongoing feedback processes. There was no more room for half-hearted attempts at engagement. This time, it had to be real. She glanced at the clock. She had just enough time to grab a quick breakfast before heading to the community center for the big meeting. The center wasn't far from her apartment, nestled in the heart of the community they were working to support. Maya had visited the center several times over the last few weeks, trying to better understand the pulse of the people there. This wasn't just about data or strategies. It was about connecting with real people, understanding their hopes, frustrations, and dreams. When she arrived, she was surprised to see a larger crowd gathered than she had expected. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, but Maya also felt an undercurrent of skepticism. The community had been burned before, and they weren't going to buy into another empty promise. As Maya walked in, she was greeted by Alicia, a local leader she had been working with closely over the past month. Alicia had been a vocal critic of the project, but Maya admired her passion for her people. She was tough, and she wasn't easily swayed by corporate jargon or slick presentations. "Hey, Maya," Alicia said, her tone warm but guarded. "Glad you could make it." Maya smiled, grateful for Alicia's openness. "Thanks for having me. I know this isn't easy, but I really believe we can make this work if we're all on the same page." Alicia gave her a nod, but Maya could tell she wasn't completely convinced. "We'll see," she said. "But today, you've got a chance to prove it." The meeting began in a small, brightly lit conference room. Maya, Alicia, and a handful of other community leaders took seats around a large circular table. Each face was full of scrutiny, but Maya was determined to stay calm and present her case. She laid out her proposal, carefully explaining how the new leadership structure would give local leaders a seat at the table from the very beginning of the project. There would be regular advisory sessions, feedback loops, and open communication channels. For the first time, the project would be genuinely shaped by the people it was meant to serve. Alicia listened carefully, her brow furrowing as Maya spoke. There was no immediate praise, no quick nod of agreement, just silence. When Maya finished, Alicia took a deep breath. "Okay, Maya," she said slowly. "This sounds like a step in the right direction. But you have to understand something. This community has been burned before. We've heard all the promises, all the plans. But when it came time to actually deliver, it was always about what they wanted, not what we needed." Maya's heart tightened at Alicia's words. She had heard similar stories from others in the community. People felt used, exploited, and unheard. It wasn't just about the project, it was about trust, a trust that had been eroded over time. "I get that, Alicia," Maya said, leaning forward. "I do. But this time, I'm asking you to give me a chance. Not just because I'm here, but because this can be different. We need your input. We need your leadership. And we need you to hold us accountable. If we don't do this right, it'll fail. But if we do it together, we can build something that lasts." The room was quiet again, and Maya could almost feel the weight of every eye on her. It was a moment of reckoning, and she had no way of knowing how it would end. Alicia let the silence stretch out for a moment longer before nodding slowly. "All right," she said. "We'll give it a try. But this is the last chance. If things don't improve, we're out. No more empty promises." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew this was just the beginning. She had won a small victory, but the real work was still ahead. "Thank you, Alicia. I won't let you down," Maya said, her voice steady, though her mind was already spinning with what came next. After the meeting, Maya felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. It was a big step forward, but it wasn't a guarantee. She knew that gaining the trust of the community would take time and sustained effort. There would be bumps along the way, setbacks, and challenges. But the key now was consistency. She drove back to her apartment in a daze, her thoughts racing. When she arrived home, she collapsed on her couch and pulled out her phone. A message from Lexi popped up immediately. "How did it go?" Maya grinned and quickly typed back, "We're in." They agreed to the new leadership structure. "It's a start, but there's a lot of work ahead." Lexi's reply came instantly, "Hell yeah. So proud of you. You've got this. One step at a time, right?" Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Lexi's support had been unwavering, even when things got tough. It meant more to her than she could say. Maya leaned back, closing her eyes. She was exhausted, but she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battle wasn't over yet, but today, She had taken a significant step toward earning the community's trust, and for the first time in a while, she believed that the project could succeed. She wasn't just a cog in a corporate machine anymore. She was part of something bigger, something that mattered. The days following the meeting with the community leaders were filled with action. Maya had returned to the office with a renewed sense of purpose. The new leadership structure she'd introduced was gaining traction, but she knew it was just a first step. Now came the real work of integrating those changes into the project and ensuring the community felt like active partners, not just contributors. She spent hours meeting with the outreach team, coordinating with Alicia and other local leaders, and refining the structure to make sure it wasn't just a token gesture but a true shift in how the project would be executed. It wasn't easy. Each step forward came with its own set of challenges. Resistance, from both within the team and from the community, was to be expected. But Maya was determined to keep moving forward. On Thursday afternoon, just as she was preparing for another round of updates with the team, she got an unexpected phone call. It was from Elon. "Hey Maya, you got a minute?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it she couldn't quite place. "Of course, Elon. What's up?" Maya replied, her heart suddenly racing. She had no idea why he was calling, but her instincts told her it wasn't just a routine check-in. "I've been reviewing the latest projections and—" He paused for a moment, and Maya could almost hear him hesitate. "We've hit a snag. The budget's going to need a major adjustment if we want to hit the next phase. We're running short on funds, and the current numbers aren't aligning with the timeline." Maya's stomach tightened. This was the last thing she needed right now. She'd been so focused on the community aspect, she hadn't kept a close enough eye on the financials. The last thing she wanted was for the project to stall because of a lack of funding. "How bad is it?" she asked, her voice steady but her mind already whirling. Elon didn't sugarcoat it. "Bad. If we don't get a significant influx of capital in the next few weeks, we'll be forced to scale back or delay some of the plans. I need you to come up with a revised financial strategy that aligns with the new community engagement framework." Maya took a deep breath, trying to keep her calm. "I'll get to work on it right away. Can you send me the numbers and the areas where we're falling short? I'll start drafting a new proposal." Elon's voice softened, just a little. "Maya, I know this is a lot, but I'm confident you can figure it out. Just make sure you get the right people involved. We can't afford any more surprises." "Understood. I'll make it my top priority." As the call ended, Maya sat at her desk, feeling the weight of Elon's words. This was uncharted territory. Not only did she have to manage the growing tension within the team and the community, but now she was also tasked with salvaging the financial stability of the project. She knew one thing for sure. She couldn't do this alone. The next day, Maya called an urgent meeting with Carter, the finance team, and Elon. She needed to get a clear picture of where the project stood financially and what adjustments were necessary. When everyone gathered around the table, there was an air of quiet tension. Elon was already sitting at the head, waiting for Maya to speak. "All right, let's dive in," Maya began. "I've reviewed the community leadership changes, and I think we're on track there. But I just got off the phone with Elon, and we have a budget problem that we need to fix immediately." Carter raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? We've been operating within our projections, haven't we?" Maya nodded, but her mind was already whirring with possible solutions. "We've hit some unforeseen costs in the community engagement framework. It's not just about financials. It's about making sure that the community has a voice and is actually involved in every phase. But there are costs associated with that. We'll need additional resources for local coordination, advisory boards, and outreach efforts." Elon leaned forward. "And where are we going to pull that from? We're already stretched thin." "That's what I need to figure out," Maya replied, feeling the pressure mounting. "But we can't afford to cut corners. We've already had one partner back out. If we don't find a way to balance this, we risk losing the entire project." Carter let out a long sigh. "Look, I get it, Maya. I do. But we can't go on spending without a clear plan. We need to identify where we can reduce costs elsewhere. Maybe some of the tech elements? Streamline the operations in other areas?" Maya was quiet for a moment, weighing her options. She knew that cutting back on the technology side would hurt the core of the project. She couldn't afford to make those sacrifices, not when the whole vision relied on that infrastructure being robust and effective. Let me think this through, she said, nodding slowly. I'm going to speak with the outreach team, find ways to make the engagement process more efficient, and work with finance to identify any areas we can cut back without compromising the core mission. By the time the weekend rolled around, Maya had spent every waking hour reviewing budgets, drafting plans, and revising proposals. She'd met with Alicia and other community leaders to explain the situation and brainstorm solutions. To her relief, they were more understanding than she'd expected, recognizing the challenges involved and offering ways to streamline their involvement without losing the integrity of their participation. On Sunday evening, as Maya sat down to a final draft of the new budget proposal, she felt like she was on the verge of a breakthrough. She'd balanced the numbers, cut back on some less critical expenses, and found ways to maximize the efficiency of community engagement efforts without compromising the overall impact. It wasn't perfect, but it was a plan. A solid plan. She hit send on the email to Elon and Carter, outlining the revised financial structure and her recommendations for moving forward. She knew the real test was still to come, getting the team to agree and act quickly. But for the first time in days, she felt a spark of optimism. She had managed to navigate a crisis, and now she had a path forward. The following Monday, the team gathered for another tense meeting. Elon was the first to speak. Maya, I've reviewed your proposal, he said, his voice steady but guarded. I have to admit, I was worried, but this is good. You found a way to balance the community engagement and keep the project moving forward. Carter was more cautious. It's not perfect, but it's workable. As long as we can hit the key milestones, I'm on board. Maya smiled, but there was still a part of her that hesitated. Thank you. I know we're walking a fine line here, but we all have a shared goal, and I think we can get there if we stay focused. Elon looked at her, his expression serious. I'm counting on you, Maya. We all are. Let's make it happen. As Maya left the meeting, a weight lifted from her shoulders, but a new challenge loomed ahead. The project was back on track, for now, but the real test would be in how the community responded to the changes. She had earned a second chance, but would they trust her enough to see this through? Maya wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. She was willing to fight for it, no matter what. The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act. Maya had successfully navigated the budget crisis, but she knew that the hard work was far from over. The community leaders had agreed to the revised engagement framework, but trust, true trust, wasn't something that could be built overnight. She would need to prove that the project was truly in their hands, not just in the hands of the corporate team pushing it forward. Maya spent countless hours meeting with Alicia and other local representatives, discussing how they could enhance the community's involvement without overwhelming the process. They brainstormed ways to integrate local culture and priorities into the project, ensuring that it reflected the needs of the people it aimed to serve. Every decision, every new direction had to go through the Community Advisory Board, which was now a cornerstone of the project. On the corporate side, things were beginning to stabilize as well. Elon, though often detached, had been more present in the meetings lately, offering guidance without micromanaging. Carter, on the other hand, remained cautious and pragmatic. He wasn't ready to trust the community engagement process entirely, but he understood the importance of making it work. Still, Maya could feel his skepticism lingering in the background. But despite the positive momentum, there was an undercurrent of tension that Maya couldn't shake. She had done her part to keep everything moving, but there was always the nagging worry. Would it be enough? It was a Wednesday afternoon when the next unexpected turn came. Maya had been preparing for another round of meetings with community leaders when her phone buzzed with a text from Lexi. Just heard something that might interest you. I know you've been working on this, but keep your ears open. Something's going down in the next couple of days. Keep your guard up. Maya's heart skipped a beat. What was Lexi talking about? She immediately dialed Lexi's number. Hey, Maya, Lexi answered after the first ring. I don't know exactly what's happening, but word is that some of the bigger community partners are starting to question the project again. I don't have all the details, but it sounds like there's a meeting later this week that could be a turning point. You might want to be ready for anything. Maya's stomach twisted. Why didn't you say anything sooner? I didn't have enough info to be sure, but I think it's worth you checking in. Just be careful. Maya tried to steady her breath. I will. Thanks for the heads up. She hung up and sat back in her chair. The project had been making progress, but Lexi's warning made her realize just how fragile that progress was. She knew all too well that one bad move could send everything spiraling again. Her mind raced. What was going on behind the scenes? She had built a fragile alliance with the community, but if they felt betrayed again, if the corporate side wasn't truly following through, they could pull out in an instant. And this time, there might not be a second chance. That night, Maya sat down with the latest community engagement reports and reviewed the feedback from local partners. As she sifted through the data, one name kept appearing: the Neighborhood Coalition. It was a large, influential group that represented several key areas of the community. Maya had met with them early on, but she hadn't heard much from them lately. If they were pulling back, that could be a serious blow to the project. She quickly drafted an email to Alicia, asking if she knew anything about growing concerns within the coalition. Within minutes, Alicia replied, "I've been hearing some murmurs, but I haven't been able to confirm anything. Let's meet tomorrow morning at the community center and talk. It's better if we talk face to face." Maya's nerves were on edge, but she knew she couldn't wait any longer. If there was trouble brewing, she needed to know the details, and she needed to act fast. The next morning, Maya met Alicia at the community center. It was early, and the center was still quiet, with only a few community members filtering in for their usual morning activities. Alicia was waiting in her usual spot by the window, her arms crossed and her expression serious. "I'm glad you came," Alicia said, motioning to the seat across from her. "We've got some concerns. The Neighborhood Coalition has been reaching out to other partners, asking about the direction of the project. They're not happy with how things are going." Maya felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. What exactly are they saying? They think the new leadership structure is just a facade. They don't feel like they're truly being heard, Maya. And it's worse than I thought. There are whispers that some of the community leaders are getting cold feet. They're afraid that this whole thing is just a corporate takeover in disguise. Maya's mind raced. The last thing she wanted was for the community to feel manipulated again. She had worked so hard to make them feel like partners, not just tools in a corporate venture. This was exactly the kind of setback she feared. And if the coalition was backing away, others might follow. Alicia continued, her voice tight. "I don't know what's going to happen next, but if we don't address these concerns quickly, the project could be in real trouble. We need transparency, Maya. We need more than just promises. We need real action." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of Alicia's words settle over her like a heavy fog. She had thought the hard part was over, but in reality, this was just the beginning. The project had never truly been in the clear. "Okay, I understand," Maya said, her voice steady but urgent. "I'll make sure we meet with the coalition. We'll get their concerns on the table and address them directly. I won't let this project fall apart." Alicia studied her for a moment before nodding. "I hope you can fix this, Maya, but time's running out." That afternoon, Maya called an emergency meeting with Elon and Carter. She wasn't sure how much of the information she could share, but she knew they needed to be prepared for the fallout if the coalition pulled out. She walked into the conference room, her mind racing with strategies. "I need you both to understand that we're facing a serious issue with the community leadership," Maya started, her voice sharp with urgency. "The Neighborhood Coalition is pulling back, and some other partners are starting to get nervous. They feel like we're not genuinely listening to them. If we don't act fast and prove our commitment, we could lose everything." Carter raised his eyebrows, clearly concerned. "So, what do you suggest we do?" "I think it's time for a complete reassessment of our approach," Maya said, looking at Elon. "We need to meet directly with the coalition leaders, hear their concerns face to face, and put in writing what specific actions we're taking to address those concerns. No more vague promises. No more delays. If we don't do this now, we risk losing them entirely." Elon didn't respond immediately, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Maya feared he would dismiss her concerns outright. But then he spoke, his tone unexpectedly firm. "Do whatever it takes to fix this, Maya, but make sure you have a clear plan for how to move forward. If the coalition falls apart, we're in serious trouble." Maya nodded, grateful for Elon's decision. "I'll get it done." As she left the meeting, Maya felt the weight of the responsibility pressing on her like never before. This wasn't just about saving a project, It was about rebuilding trust with people who had every right to feel betrayed. And if she couldn't do that, then nothing would matter. The next few days felt like a blur to Maya. She dove into the work with urgency, contacting the neighborhood coalition and arranging a meeting for the following week. Time was slipping through her fingers, and the pressure was mounting. But she refused to let the situation spiral out of control. She spent hours drafting an agenda for the meeting, carefully outlining the steps they'd taken so far and the commitments they were prepared to make moving forward. She needed to come across as not just capable but sincere. No more empty promises. This meeting would be a make-or-break moment for the project. On the morning of the meeting, Maya stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, adjusting the collar of her blazer. Her reflection stared back at her, a mixture of exhaustion and determination in her eyes. She couldn't afford to fail today, not when everything she'd worked for was on the line. The car ride to the community center felt like it took forever. Every bump in the road seemed to echo in her mind, amplifying her anxiety. She had no idea what to expect when she walked into that room. Would the coalition be ready to listen? Or would they already have made up their minds? When she arrived at the center, she was greeted by Alicia, who seemed just as tense. "Are you ready?" Alicia asked, her voice low but steady. "I have to be," Maya replied, her pulse quickening. "Let's just hope we can turn this around." The meeting room was buzzing with the murmur of voices as community leaders and representatives from the coalition took their seats. Maya felt the weight of their eyes on her as she entered the room, her heart pounding in her chest. It was impossible to ignore the undercurrent of skepticism in the air. People were watching her, waiting for her to prove that this wasn't just another corporate scheme. She sat down at the head of the table, Alicia by her side. As the room quieted, Maya cleared her throat, trying to steady her nerves. "Thank you for meeting with me today," she began, her voice calm but resolute. "I know there have been concerns about the direction of this project, and I'm here to address those concerns head-on. This project was never meant to be a top-down venture. It's meant to be something we build together. And if there have been any missteps along the way, I'm here to take responsibility and make things right." She paused, scanning the faces around the table. Some of them were familiar from earlier meetings, but there were others she didn't recognize, more senior figures in the community who had come to see what Maya had to offer. "I'm not here to make excuses," Maya continued. "I've heard your concerns, and I understand why you're frustrated. Our community engagement efforts haven't been perfect, and we've made mistakes. But I want you to know that we are committed to this project, and more importantly, we are committed to you. You, the people we're here to serve, are at the heart of everything we do." A few people exchanged looks across the table. Maya could feel their eyes narrowing, waiting for her next move. She took a deep breath, pushing the nerves to the back of her mind. Now was the time to show them that she wasn't just speaking from a corporate perspective. She was speaking as a partner in this community. "I'm here today not to talk about what's been done, but to focus on what we can do moving forward," Maya said. "Together, we can reshape this project to truly reflect the needs of the community. I'm proposing the following changes. We will increase the number of advisory boards that represent various sectors of the community. We will commit to more frequent town halls where every voice can be heard. And we will ensure that your input is not just considered but actively implemented in every stage of this project. And above all, we will ensure that this project works for you, not just for us." She could see a few heads nodding, but there were still skeptical faces in the room. The weight of the moment felt like it was pressing in on her, but she refused to back down. She had come too far to let this slip away now. The leader of the neighborhood coalition, a tall man named James, spoke up. "You talk a good game, Maya, but how do we know this won't just be another corporate shell game? How do we know that our voices won't be drowned out once the funding kicks in and the real work starts?" Maya nodded, acknowledging his concern. "James, I understand your skepticism. We've seen this kind of thing happen before, and that's why we're putting everything on the table now. You will have a direct line to our team at all times, and any significant decisions will go through the community advisory boards first. You will have the power to veto anything that doesn't align with what we've promised." There was a long silence in the room as James considered her words. The tension was palpable. Maya held her breath, knowing that this moment could tip either way. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, James spoke again. You're asking us to trust you, he said. And that's not easy. But what you're saying sounds different. We'll give you a chance, on one condition. Maya leaned forward, her heart racing. What's the condition? James' gaze was steady, unflinching. You follow through. This can't be just talk. If we don't see action, we're out. And we'll make sure the rest of the community knows why. Maya swallowed hard, but she held his gaze. You have my word. We'll follow through, James. Every step of the way. The meeting ended with a cautious optimism that Maya had only dared to hope for. The coalition hadn't fully committed yet, but they'd agreed to move forward with the revised plans. It was a small victory, but in this high-stakes game, it felt like a monumental one. As Maya walked out of the community center with Alicia, the weight of the day's events settled over her. She had a long road ahead, but for the first time in weeks, she felt like she had a clear path. She wasn't done fighting for this project, not by a long shot, but today had been a step in the right direction. I think we did it, Alicia said, her voice quiet with relief. Maya nodded, but her mind was already working through the next steps. It's not over yet. There's still a lot to prove, but we've got a shot. And that was all Maya needed, the shot. She wasn't going to let it slip away. Back at the office, Maya updated Elon and Carter on the meeting, and while Elon remained stoic, Carter was noticeably more upbeat. This is progress, Maya, he said. But remember, it's not just about appeasing the community. It's about showing them that we can deliver. Don't let up. I won't, Maya replied. We're just getting started. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of follow-up meetings, town halls, and community outreach events. Every day felt like a new challenge, and Maya could feel the eyes of the coalition watching her every move. But for the first time in the project's history, she felt like the community was genuinely being heard. She wasn't just managing a project. She was building something real, a partnership that could make a difference. But as Maya worked to keep the momentum going, she knew that the real test would come when the project finally launched. Would the community stand behind them, or would everything collapse under the weight of unmet expectations? She didn't know the answer yet, but she was more determined than ever to find out. The weeks following the meeting with the neighborhood coalition were filled with intense activity. Maya had pushed hard to keep the promise of transparency alive, meeting with community leaders and local partners, revising plans, and ensuring that everyone had a voice in shaping the project's next steps. But as much as Maya hoped to continue riding the wave of momentum, a quiet undercurrent of doubt began to ripple through the group. She started receiving anonymous emails from local residents, expressing skepticism about the changes. They feared that the corporate influence, while masked by all the community-friendly language, was still too strong. Despite all the progress they had made, the trust that had been broken was not easily repaired. One morning, Maya received a call from Alicia. Her voice was tight, filled with the same urgency Maya had heard before. Maya, we need to talk, Alicia said. There's been a meeting. Some of the old guard from the coalition, they're planning to pull out. They're telling everyone that this whole thing was a corporate setup from the start. I think they're planning a public statement. Maya's stomach sank. The fear she had been pushing aside for weeks was suddenly right in front of her, real and tangible. What do we do? We need to meet with them. Immediately, Alicia said. If we can't stop this, it's over. And I don't think we have a lot of time. Maya barely had time to process the words. She hung up and quickly gathered her things. She couldn't afford to let this spiral. Not now. Not when everything was at stake. By the time Maya and Alicia arrived at the community center, the room was already full of tense faces. A few familiar faces from the coalition were sitting at the head of the table, looking serious. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she approached, taking a seat beside Alicia. James, the leader of the coalition, was the first to speak. His tone was firm, the familiar warmth replaced with something colder. We've heard a lot of talk, Maya, but at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. And right now, your actions aren't aligning with what you've promised. Maya's breath caught in her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. James, I understand your concerns, and I can assure you. No, Maya, James interrupted, his voice sharp. You don't understand. You've promised us transparency, community-led decisions, and real action. But behind the scenes, We've seen the same old corporate tactics. The numbers aren't adding up, the outreach is hollow, and our community doesn't feel like partners, they feel like pawns. Maya's chest tightened. That's not what we're doing. The commitments we've made are real. We've pushed for more direct involvement, more local decision-making. Do you think that's enough? James cut her off again. We don't just want involvement in the process, Maya. We want control. We want to drive this project, not just rubber stamp what's handed to us. And we're not seeing that. The room was silent for a moment. Every eye was on Maya, and she could feel the pressure of it bearing down on her. This was it. If she couldn't convince them to stay, the project was as good as dead. I hear you, James. I hear all of you, Maya said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. And you're right. We've made mistakes. But I promise you, we are not abandoning the vision we set out with. If you'll give us the chance, we will not just allow the community to have a seat at the table. We will give you a voice that carries weight in every decision that's made from here on out. A few of the leaders exchanged doubtful looks. Maya could see the skepticism in their eyes. They didn't trust her. They didn't trust her team. But just as Maya was about to speak again, something unexpected happened. The door to the meeting room opened, and in walked none other than Elon Musk, flanked by his usual entourage of assistants and security. Maya froze. What was he doing here? Elon, she blurted out before she could stop herself. What are you? He held up a hand, cutting her off. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought it was time to clear the air. I've been hearing a lot about these concerns, and frankly, I think we need to have a bigger conversation. The room went silent. Everyone turned toward Elon, their expressions a mixture of confusion and surprise. This was not the kind of intervention Maya had imagined. James, clearly taken aback by Elon's sudden appearance, spoke up cautiously. And what exactly do you mean by that, Mr. Musk? Elon leaned forward, his gaze scanning the room. What I mean is that the situation has changed. I know there's been a lot of talk about corporate influence and top-down decision-making, but let's be real. The project can't succeed without collaboration. I know what Maya and the team have been trying to do. They're doing it the right way, but if we keep fighting each other, this will all fall apart. A tense silence followed Elon's words. James seemed to be weighing the situation, clearly unsure of how to respond. But then Elon added something that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. Here's the thing, Elon continued, his voice carrying authority. I'm not here to make a speech. I'm here to tell you that we're committed to making this work, for the community, for the people. But it's going to take something more than promises and public relations. It's going to take trust, and I'm willing to put my name on the line to show that we mean it. Maya watched in awe as the room began to shift. She had never seen Elon speak with such passion about the community aspect of the project. It was as if a switch had been flipped. She had always known he was smart, driven, and innovative, but this side of him, the side that actually cared, was new. James slowly nodded, clearly not entirely convinced, but his stance softened. You're putting your name on the line? He asked, his voice low. Absolutely, Elon replied without hesitation. This isn't just about profit margins or timelines. It's about real change, real growth for everyone involved. We want to be held accountable. We will answer to you, directly. Maya felt a strange wave of relief wash over her. This wasn't just her fight anymore. Elon's commitment had shifted the dynamic. The room no longer felt like a courtroom where her every word was being scrutinized. Now it felt like a conversation, a negotiation. After a long pause, James spoke again. We'll need to see more than just words. But if you're serious, if you're really ready to put your money where your mouth is, we'll give this one last shot. Maya's breath caught. This was it. They were giving her another chance. But now she had to deliver. We're serious, Maya said, her voice stronger than ever. We will do everything in our power to make this work. Together. The rest of the meeting was a blur of plans, promises, and renewed commitments. Elon had made a powerful statement, but Maya knew that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The road ahead would be even more difficult, and the stakes were higher than ever. As the meeting broke up and the community leaders filed out, Maya stood there, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and hope. She had done it. They had done it. But now came the hard part, proving that their words were more than just that. As she left the room, Alicia gave her a look of cautious optimism. "Well, that was unexpected," Alicia said with a half-smile. "Yeah," Maya replied, a small grin playing at the corners of her lips. "But I think we might just have a shot now." And with that, Maya walked out into the uncertain future, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The days following Elon's surprise appearance were a whirlwind of renewed activity. Maya's team, energized by the powerful endorsement, set to work with a renewed sense of urgency. There were plans to revise, community meetings to attend, and endless phone calls with stakeholders to ensure everyone stayed aligned. But despite all the progress, the looming shadow of doubt still hung over the project. Maya knew that words alone wouldn't win over the community, actions would. The trust that had been fractured by months of miscommunication and corporate rhetoric couldn't be repaired with a single speech, no matter how heartfelt. The true test would come when the project began to take shape on the ground, and the community would see whether the promises were truly reflected in their daily lives. Maya sat at her desk late one night, her laptop open to a spreadsheet of the revised budget. She was scrutinizing every number, ensuring that the funding allocation for the community programs was clear and transparent. Elon had promised his support, but now it was up to her to make sure they followed through. There were too many eyes on them now, not just from the community, but from corporate partners, investors, and even local government officials who were beginning to watch with bated breath. The phone on her desk buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from Alicia. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at the center at 7. Maya frowned. It was well past 7 p.m. already, and Alicia's tone suggested something had gone wrong. Without hesitation, Maya grabbed her coat and headed out the door. When she arrived at the community center, Alicia was waiting for her in the parking lot. The concern in Alicia's eyes was unmistakable. "Maya, something's not right," she said before Maya could even ask. "What happened?" Maya's heart raced. Alicia looked over her shoulder, making sure no one was around to overhear. "You're not going to like this, but I've been hearing whispers. There are some serious concerns about the project's transparency, especially regarding the funding. People are starting to say that there are too many outside investors with too much influence. And now there's talk of another public statement from the coalition, this time with a much stronger stance. They're questioning whether the project is truly going to benefit the community or if it's just a new way to gentrify the area and push out the people who need it most." Maya's stomach dropped. "I thought we had an agreement. Elon's endorsement was supposed to smooth things over." "It's not about the endorsement anymore, Maya," Alicia said quietly. "It's about what we're actually doing. Words only go so far. We need to show them that we're not just another development project. We need to prove that we're committed to the community and not just to profits." Maya swallowed hard. The weight of the truth hit her like a punch in the gut. She had believed that they were on the right track, that they had time to prove themselves. But this felt like a sinking ship, and no amount of good intentions could bail them out if they didn't act quickly. The following morning, Maya convened an emergency meeting with Elon, Carter, and the senior management team. They gathered in the sleek, minimalist conference room, the view of the city skyline out the windows doing little to distract from the tension in the air. "I've been hearing the same things, Maya," Carter said, tapping his pen on the table nervously. "I think we've underestimated the level of suspicion the community has. We've been talking the talk, but we haven't shown enough that we're truly listening. There's a fine line between pushing for progress and trampling over people's lives." Maya nodded, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "So, what do we do now?" Elon, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. His voice was uncharacteristically calm but resolute. "We need to step up our game. If we want to regain their trust, we have to be radically transparent, not just with the community, but with every single stakeholder involved. It's time we hold ourselves accountable, not just in words, but in action." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by radically transparent?" Elon's gaze never wavered. "I mean showing the community exactly how their money is being spent, where every dollar goes, and how we're ensuring the project isn't just a corporate cash grab. I'm talking about community-run financial audits, open access to project budgets, and a commitment to reinvest any profits back into the neighborhood in a way that's controlled and managed by the community itself." Maya blinked, taking in the gravity of Elon's suggestion. She had been focused on the day-to-day management of the project, but this was something else entirely. It was a full-on commitment to reshaping the narrative. "Are you sure about this?" Maya asked, looking at Elon. "This could cost us, not just financially, but in terms of reputation. We'd be giving the community a level of oversight that most developers would never consider." Elon met her gaze with unwavering conviction. "If we're going to make this work, we can't just talk about being different. We have to be different. And I'm willing to put our resources where our mouth is." The room fell silent. Maya felt a strange mix of awe and disbelief. Could they really pull this off? "Okay," Maya said, after a beat. "Let's do it. Let's make the community not just stakeholders, but partners. Full partners." That afternoon, Maya called a town hall meeting in the heart of the community. It was a bold move, and she knew there would be backlash. But she also knew that the only way to rebuild trust was to be completely open, even if it meant exposing the flaws in the project. The event was held in a small, overcrowded hall. The air was thick with tension as Maya stood at the front, ready to make the announcement. The crowd, a mixture of residents, activists, and local leaders, waited for her to speak. She cleared her throat, the weight of the moment pressing on her. "I've called this meeting today to be as transparent with you as possible," she began. "We understand that you've been waiting for results, not just promises. And that's why we're making a commitment today to open up every aspect of this project to the community. From now on, we will hold community-run audits of our budget. We will make every line item visible so you can see exactly where your money is going. And we will create a community advisory board that has the power to decide how profits from this project are reinvested in the neighborhood." There was a ripple of murmurs in the room, some skeptical, some hopeful. Maya could feel the room's uncertainty, but she also saw a flicker of something else, maybe even a little hope. "We're not just asking for your trust," she continued. "We're giving you a chance to hold us accountable. This is your community, and we're here to serve it. Together, we can make this project something that benefits everyone." It was a gamble, but it was the only way forward. The town hall ended with mixed reactions. Some of the more vocal community members were still skeptical, and there were many who left the room shaking their heads. But there were others, quiet leaders in the background, who stayed behind to speak with Maya, asking questions and discussing how they could get involved in the new community oversight initiatives. Maya left the hall feeling drained but resolute. They weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like they were on the right track. As she made her way to the parking lot, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Alicia. "We got the press release. They're really going public with this." Maya's heart sank. The press release was a make-or-break moment. It could either solidify everything they had worked for, or it could tear apart the fragile trust they had just begun to rebuild. The real battle was just beginning. The press release hit the wires the next morning like a bombshell. Maya's inbox was flooded with emails, and her phone rang constantly. The message was simple but powerful. Community takes charge of development project. New transparency measures will ensure fairness and accountability. The reactions were immediate, and they were mixed. Some media outlets hailed it as a groundbreaking move, calling it a win for community empowerment and a model for future development projects. Others, however, saw it as a desperate attempt to salvage a sinking ship. But it wasn't just the media that was buzzing. Within hours, Maya received calls from both her corporate partners and her investors. There was concern in their voices, and though some were cautiously optimistic, others were less convinced. Carter was one of the first to reach out. "Maya, what in the world is going on? I get the whole community involvement angle, but this feels like we're handing over the keys to the kingdom. Are you sure about this?" Maya exhaled slowly. "We don't have a choice, Carter. This is the only way we're going to keep the project alive. If we don't show the community we're serious, they'll walk away. We'll lose it all." "I get that," Carter replied, his voice tight with frustration, "but I think we've underestimated the blowback. You might be putting the whole project at risk." Maya swallowed hard. The weight of what she had set in motion was starting to hit her full force. This was no longer just about building a development. This was about whether the project could survive, and whether they could earn back the trust they had lost. The following days were a blur of intense meetings. Maya spent hours on the phone with community leaders, answering questions, listening to concerns, and trying to reassure them that the project was moving in the right direction. But as much as she tried to hold everything together, cracks were starting to appear. At a key meeting with the new Community Advisory Board, one of the members, a longtime activist named Nia, spoke up. "I appreciate the transparency, Maya," she said, her voice steady but skeptical. "But transparency alone isn't enough. What guarantee do we have that when push comes to shove, the decisions will be made in the community's best interest? You said this project is for the people. But when the rubber meets the road, who's really going to call the shots?" Maya had anticipated this question, and yet it still felt like a punch to the gut. Nia's words echoed everything that had been said in the town hall, and everything Maya feared. They weren't just doubting the project anymore. They were doubting her. "I hear you, Nia," Maya said, taking a deep breath. "And I can't give you a perfect answer right now. But what I can tell you is that we're not going to walk away. We're committed to listening, to adapting, and to making this work, for everyone. This project is yours as much as it is mine. We need each other to make this happen." Nia didn't seem convinced, but she nodded slowly, her arms crossed over her chest. "We'll see," she said, and the words hung heavy in the air. Maya felt the weight of that uncertainty settle in her bones. "We'll see." That was all they had. Later that evening, as Maya sat alone in her office, her phone rang again. It was Elon. She hadn't heard from him since the town hall, and she had a sinking feeling that this conversation was going to be difficult. "Hey, Elon," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey, Maya," Elon replied, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "I've been getting a lot of feedback about the press release. Some of it's positive, but there's a lot of concern coming from our partners and investors. I need to know you've got a handle on this. Are we really in this for the long haul? Or is this some kind of PR stunt?" Maya swallowed hard. "I'm not doing this for PR, Elon. We've already gone too far to turn back now, but I know the pressure is intense. I'm doing everything I can to keep this on track." "Good," Elon said, his voice softening, "because you've got a lot more people watching you now. And trust me, if you can pull this off, you'll have changed the game. But if you can't, well, it's not just the project that will fall apart. It's everything we've built here." Maya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. The weight of his words settled on her shoulders like a stone. "I won't let it fall apart," she said, more to herself than to Elon. "We're going to make it work." The next morning, Maya arrived early at the office, determined to find a way to bridge the gap between the community and the investors. As much as she believed in the project, she knew that without the support of both sides, it would collapse. Carter was already there when she arrived, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Maya," he said before she even had a chance to sit down, "we've got a problem. The investors are pulling back. They're not convinced this community oversight idea is sustainable. They think it's a recipe for disaster." Maya's heart sank. She had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Carter replied. "They're pushing for more control, more say in the decision-making. They want to see the Community Advisory Board's influence reduced. They don't trust that the people in the community have the expertise to run this project." Maya felt the sting of betrayal. She had thought Elon's commitment to transparency would carry them through, but now it seemed that even he might be backing off. "Can we do anything to change their minds?" she asked, trying to keep the edge of desperation out of her voice. "Maybe," Carter said, running a hand through his hair, "but you're going to have to get creative. You need to show them that the community can't just take over, but that they can work alongside us, and that it's in everyone's best interest. If you can't do that, we'll lose them for good." Maya felt the walls closing in. She had been fighting for this project for so long, and now, with everything on the line, it felt like she was losing control. By mid-afternoon, Maya found herself at the heart of the project site. She had called an impromptu meeting with key community leaders, investors, and the new advisory board. It was time to face the music. When everyone was gathered, Maya stood in front of them, her nerves electric. She had planned to talk about the need for compromise, for unity, but as she looked at the faces in the crowd, each one filled with hope, skepticism, or fear, she realized something. This wasn't about just compromise. It was about finding a way forward that worked for everyone, even if it meant doing things they had never done before. We've come this far because we all believe in this project, Maya began, her voice steady but filled with passion. But I know we're at a crossroads. There's fear on both sides. Fear that the community will lose control, and fear that the investors will take over. The truth is, there's no way forward unless we can build something that works for all of us. She paused, making eye contact with everyone in the room. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the future of this community. It's about our homes, our schools, our lives. And I know that we all want the same thing, a better future. We just need to find a way to do it together. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with the weight of the decisions they all had to make. Finally, it was Nia who spoke, her voice steady but determined. "You're right, Maya," she said. "We've all got skin in this game. But if we're really going to make this work, there has to be accountability from everyone, investors, developers, and the community. If you're willing to give us a real seat at the table, then we'll work with you. But it has to be real. No more empty promises." Maya nodded, her heart lifting. "It will be real, Nia. I promise you." And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe it. The air was thick with tension as the meeting progressed. Maya had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but the stakes had never felt this high. The conversations in the room were no longer just about development timelines or profit margins. This was about something deeper: trust, integrity, and the future of a community that had been overlooked for far too long. Nia's words had lingered in Maya's mind. "If you're willing to give us a real seat at the table, we'll work with you. But it has to be real." Maya's decision was clear. She couldn't afford to just talk the talk anymore. The project wasn't going to succeed if it wasn't built on mutual respect and collaboration. She had to deliver on her promises for everyone, not just the investors. The following week, Maya took the next bold step. She arranged a joint meeting with the Community Advisory Board, key investors, and Elon. It was time for transparency to not only be a buzzword but a living, breathing part of the project. She sat at the head of the table, flanked by Nia and a few other leaders from the advisory board. Across from them sat the investors, some cautious, others visibly agitated by the loss of control they'd been asked to relinquish. Elon, for his part, was present but quiet. He seemed to be observing, giving Maya the space to lead this conversation. Maya cleared her throat and stood up. "Thank you all for being here. This meeting is about one thing: trust. Trust that we are in this together, working toward the same goal." There was a murmur of acknowledgement around the room, but not all of it was positive. "We've made a commitment to the community that they will have a real say in how this project develops. And today, I'm here to tell you that this isn't just about lip service. The community's input will be a driving force in every major decision we make from here on out." She paused, letting her words sink in. "That means transparency on all levels: financial, operational, and ethical. And it also means we'll establish a system of checks and balances to ensure we're staying true to the goals we've set out." One of the investors, a man named Robert, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concern. "Maya, you've been clear that this is about collaboration. But let's be real. If we give them a seat at the table, we're going to lose control over how things are run. That's not a good business model." Maya took a deep breath, prepared for this moment. "Robert, I understand your concern, but I disagree. The model we're proposing isn't just about building a physical structure. It's about rebuilding a sense of community. And when we do that, we all win. Investors get a long-term, sustainable project, while the community gains empowerment and ownership over the changes in their own neighborhood. It's not a zero-sum game. It's about win-win." Nia spoke up from her seat. "We don't just want a voice in name only. We want a seat at the decision-making table. That means real power, real influence, over how the project evolves. We want to ensure that, as this project progresses, it doesn't just serve the interests of outsiders, but benefits everyone." Robert looked skeptical, but Maya could see that the room was divided. Half of the investors were still uncomfortable with the idea of community oversight, while the others were starting to see the value in this new approach. Elon, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. "I've been following this closely," he said, his tone measured. And I agree with Maya. We're not just building something physical here. We're laying the groundwork for a new way of doing things, where the community is central, and we don't just push development in without thinking of the long-term consequences. If we can pull this off, we're not just changing this neighborhood. We're changing the entire landscape of urban development. There was a moment of silence, and Maya held her breath. Elon's endorsement carried weight, but it was the investor's turn to respond. A younger investor, Jessica, raised her hand, her voice tentative but clear. What if this works? What if we do make this a model for future developments? I get that there are risks, but what if this actually becomes the future of how we build cities? Maya felt a flicker of hope. Exactly, Jessica. What if this is the beginning of something that challenges the status quo and proves that it's not only possible to work with communities, but essential to do so? The room buzzed with quiet murmurs. Maya could see that, for the first time, the investors were starting to warm to the idea, not because they were convinced it was a perfect solution, but because they could see the potential for something groundbreaking. The meeting continued for several more hours, filled with debates, questions, and the occasional heated exchange. But when it finally adjourned, there was an unspoken understanding in the room. The Community Advisory Board had been given more influence, the investors had been reassured, and Maya had proven, in the most difficult way possible, that she could hold everyone's interests in balance. But Maya knew that the hard work was just beginning. The real test would be whether the new framework would hold under pressure, especially once the first construction trucks rolled in and the promises of transparency and collaboration were put to the test in the real world. In the weeks that followed, progress on the project moved forward, but it was far from smooth sailing. The Community Advisory Board was involved in every major decision, from selecting contractors to reviewing financial reports. Some members of the board were more involved than others, but Maya worked closely with Nia and Alicia to ensure that the project remained on track. As expected, there were bumps along the way. Some expected, others not. But despite the difficulties, something shifted. There was a renewed sense of optimism in the air. People from both sides, the community and the investors, started to see the benefits of this new approach. They saw the projects beginning to take shape, not just in the physical world, but in the relationships that were forming. Elon, who had remained mostly in the background after the initial meetings, made another surprise appearance one afternoon. He walked through the construction site, inspecting the work and speaking with both the construction workers and the community representatives who were overseeing the process. When he stopped by Maya's office afterward, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. "You've done it, Maya," he said, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I was skeptical at first, but I have to admit, it's working." Maya looked out the window, watching the workers and community members come together. "It's working," she agreed, her voice soft but filled with hope. "But we're not done yet. There's still a long road ahead." Elon nodded. "That's the thing about real change. It's not easy, but it's worth it." Maya smiled. It wasn't just the project that was changing. It was everything. They were proving that it was possible to do things differently. And that, more than anything, was worth fighting for. The weeks that followed the joint meeting were filled with momentum. What had once seemed like an impossible dream was slowly but surely turning into a reality. The project, once fraught with tension, began to take on a new life. Maya watched, with a growing sense of pride, as the community's involvement became more than just a token gesture. It was a vital force pushing the project forward. In every board meeting, in every design decision, the voices of the people who would live and work in the development were heard. Community members weren't just consulted. They were integral in shaping the project. They decided where the green spaces should go, how the housing would be designed, and even what businesses would be prioritized in the commercial areas. Slowly, the vision that had once seemed like a risk was becoming the blueprint for the future. The investors, though still wary at times, began to see the returns on their investment. Maya and Nia worked tirelessly to ensure that both sides, community and corporate, understood each other's needs. They held regular updates, hosted town halls, and ensured that everyone had a chance to voice their concerns. There was a newfound trust building, but Maya knew that this wasn't something that could ever be taken for granted. Trust, like anything worthwhile, had to be nurtured. As the construction neared its final stages, The community gathered for a grand ceremony to mark the milestone. It wasn't just a ribbon-cutting event. It was a celebration of the collective effort, a moment to recognize how far they had come and how much they had accomplished together. Maya stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new. The project, which had once been a symbol of corporate greed and exclusion, now stood as a testament to the power of collaboration. She was surrounded by people who had once felt overlooked, ignored, even betrayed, but who now stood proudly, side by side, with the developers, investors, and leaders who had made this transformation possible. Nia stood next to her, her arms crossed, a proud smile on her face. "You did it," she whispered to Maya. Maya felt a surge of emotion. She had done it, yes, but she hadn't done it alone. This was the product of months of hard work, of sleepless nights, of countless meetings and difficult conversations. And now, standing here, it all felt worth it. "I couldn't have done it without all of you," Maya replied quietly, her voice thick with emotion. The crowd cheered as Maya stepped back, allowing the next speaker to take the stage. The applause was thunderous, and for a moment, she let herself bask in the moment. The weight of everything, the pressure, the doubts, the fears, faded into the background as she allowed herself to appreciate the magnitude of what they had achieved. Later that evening, after the celebrations had died down, Maya walked through the development site one last time. The sun had just set, casting a warm glow over the buildings. The streets were empty now, but she could imagine the hustle and bustle of daily life that would soon fill these spaces. She smiled as she walked past the shops, the green spaces, the open courtyards. The vision was no longer just a set of plans. It was becoming a living, breathing community. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text from Elon. "I think we've just made history. Congrats, Maya. This is only the beginning." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Elon had been right all along. They hadn't just built a development. They had built something that could change the way cities were built. Something that could inspire others to rethink how they approached urban planning and to put people at the center of the conversation. But Maya knew this was just the beginning. The real legacy of this project wouldn't be in the buildings themselves or the dollars it brought in. It would be in the lasting change it created. The shift in how communities could work with developers, how cities could be built with heart as much as concrete. As the months passed, the project continued to thrive. The community's involvement remained a cornerstone of its success, and the lessons learned were spread to other cities, other developments. Maya's name became synonymous with change, with innovation in urban development. She gave speeches at conferences, wrote articles, and became a sought-after consultant. But no matter how far she traveled, no matter how many accolades she received, Maya always came back to this place. The community she had helped build, the people whose lives had been changed. One day, as she walked through the park, now full of children playing, people jogging, and families enjoying the open space, Nia caught up with her. "You did it," Nia said again, her voice filled with pride. "You really did it." Maya laughed softly. "We all did it, Nia. I'm just one piece of the puzzle." Nia smiled. "True, but sometimes it takes one person to show that it's possible. And you did that." Maya looked out at the vibrant neighborhood, the streets bustling with life. The housing was full, the businesses were thriving, and the community was flourishing. But what Maya saw wasn't just the success of a development project. She saw the seeds of something even bigger, something that would continue to grow, evolve, and inspire. As she stood there, a thought settled in her mind. Legacy isn't built on structures or numbers. It was built on relationships, on people, on trust. The buildings may have been the canvas, but the true masterpiece was the community that had grown from it. And as Maya looked out over the neighborhood, she knew that this was only the beginning. The future was wide open, full of possibilities. She smiled. Together, they had made something incredible. And this time, Maya knew it was real. The change had come, not just in the project, but in the very way people thought about what was possible. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?